House bunker. A troubling new report from the Shuttleworth Institute shows that due to Facebook, every potential candidate for the 2040 presidential race, no matter how smart or accomplished, is now completely unelectable. I'm standing in the 2012 Democrat with Jason Copeland. Jason, walk us through this.
Yeah, we're looking at really a political crisis. The Democrats are currently searching basements and creepy backyard sheds in search of somebody who was kidnapped at a young enough age that they have no online presence.
That is a very interesting tactic.
Could be an option, and the GOP has been looking at this young man. This is a 20-year-old Jeeves Jones. He's currently living in Appalachia with his fundamentalist Christian grandmother and no electricity.
So Jeeves has no Facebook page?
Jeeves does not. In fact, he's completely illiterate, and the Republican Party has begun grooming him for a possible candidacy in 2036.
All right. Well, at least there's someone. Thank you, Jason Copeland.
Thanks, Andrea.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. That means you can call that number, bring up whatever is on your mind, and tell anybody that's listening what you think. Tell us we're wrong, or find three people sitting here who want to have a conversation with you about such topic that you want to bring up. With you on the show tonight on Free Talk Live, it's me, Bonnie,
Riley,
and Stu.
And one of the things we all agreed we wanted to talk about. Wait, Riley, I'm not sure if you said, had you heard about Trump saying that he wants to buy Gaza?
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. I'm not sure if I really like the idea, if it's true, because I think it's a stupid idea.
Yeah. It is stupid. One thing that I thought about it, and I've thought a lot about it because it was like over a week ago that he said that. One of the things I thought about last night, I just happened to see this one video and it took me onto this guy's channel on YouTube, and I was watching a bunch of videos of this guy just drives in the worst parts of different cities in the United States, especially in the Rust Belt. And it's just a bunch of broken down, crappy homes and businesses and stuff where if anybody's living in there, it's like a meth head who is just passing out on the ground. It's not like, oh, it seems like a poor people neighborhood. Like, no, it's like trash.
Real shanty towns.
Yeah. And it's like one of the reasons I thought about that concerning the Gaza thing Trump said is he said, we'll take the responsibility of bulldozing everything and cleaning it out, the war zone. And we haven't even done anything like that with these shanty towns in the United States. So why would we start in Gaza, one? And two, do we even have the ability to? Because nobody's done that in Detroit.
Let's just presume this whole thing with Gaza is real.
Yeah, that's another thing.
I think it's a big thing to say that, oh, we're going to take over Gaza and give Israel Gaza or whatever. Because it's a huge move for the Israelis, because the Israelis claim the land for their inheritance, and they've been doing so for thousands of years. However, that being said, there's another group of people that claims the land too, and that's the Palestinians. So, it's a way for the American government to pick a winner in this game.
I just was pretty sure that he was not saying he would give it to Israel, so I looked over really fast this Al Jazeera article when you're talking, and I don't think he is saying he'd give it to Israel, because it says here in the little bullet points of this article, it says he has suggested that the U.S. should take control of Gaza to ensure stability. Palestinians should be relocated, and oh wait, that's the wrong one I'm supposed to be reading it. And it says the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the U.S. by Israel at the conclusion of fighting between Israel and Hamas.
Can you imagine if he was talking about, I don't know, St. Louis? Everybody in St. Louis needs to be relocated, and we're going to level the thing to the ground
and turn it into a resort.
Or give it to I don't know, who could we give it to? Oh, the Mexicans.
And also, I'd like to say on the history of the Israel-Palestine thing, for the furthest back claim I know of, unless you want to there's a broken line of claim of ownership there, and there was no Jewish claim over any part of the Middle East until
1940, right?
Well, no, it was earlier than that. It started in the 1800s with the Zionist project to colonize a place in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're looking at going back to the Crusades or whatever, and that's not. I mean, there's an unbroken line there. So this is just, this is just Zionists moving in and then being bad neighbors.
But don't you want Zionists to take over Israel? Shouldn't the Jews have a home too, Stu?
I don't know. Everybody has the right to seek a home, but nobody's guaranteed to one.
That's exactly
true.
right. That's
Yeah.
a perfect way to put it, because it's like, I always hear people say that like the Jews should have a homeland. It's like, well, I'm pretty sure they're one of the richest minorities in the whole planet. I'm pretty sure they could figure that out,
Yeah, and it's kind of frowned upon to go ahead and homestead land that's already being used by somebody actively.
Yeah. At least without just going there and being like, hey, we want to buy this from you, and what's the fair price,
Yeah, and when Trump says he wants to buy the place, I don't think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And if he was, there would be some level of eminent domain
He already
involved, because there are certainly people there that have been there, for generations upon end,
and just don't want to leave.
and don't want to leave at any price.
Yep. And that it makes it more likely that that'll happen than just maybe you living in your grandma's house in Alabama or something, because they believe that there's some kind of like religious significance to them being there, that the Zionists and the Muslims and like a bunch of the people that live there, they're always fighting over specific sites. It's one of the most annoying parts about their religions, because it's like makes war happen, because you all think that your God told you get to own this piece of land when that's not how things work.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, people fight religious wars over territory all the time, and so when Israel and Gaza are being fought over by the Jews and the Palestinians, one side is going to claim, oh well, the Jews get this because our God said so, and the Palestinians say, well, no, our God said so, and so the religious war over land is just absurd, because it's all a special pleading argument, and the Christian right, if you will, love to claim that their God gave the land to Israel as their inheritance, and it's just, to me, it's just an absurd war that we keep fighting over and over again because, well, we think we have a claim over who gets to be the winner and loser in a territory, and it's just a waste of our time to declare winners and losers when, maybe they should just duke it out themselves, and whoever wins the land, and that should be that.
As far as the people calling the shots, I don't think the religious aspect really has a lot to do with it. It's more of a geopolitical thing, and has been. It's more of a banker's scheming sort of a thing, I should say.
Well, I think religion does have something to do with a lot of. I just don't know if you would necessarily, if we have any way to know if they're like the people calling the shots, but there are the Zionists that they believe things like, oh, they need to rebuild a temple somewhere, and there has to be a red heifer born.
Oh yeah, I've been hearing that all for the past several years.
Yeah, me too. But it's like, I keep hearing like a red heifer was actually born, and I'm like, uh-oh, but then it ends up being not true.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I looked into one of these red heifer stories, and there was like, I don't know, Israel bought 12 red heifers from Texas and had them shipped over in a special way or something. And this actually happened, but like there was no following official sacrifice of the red heifer or anything like that. So
that's kind of what I meant too, because in the things I remember happening, I'll hear about a red heifer being born that they say was perfect in the specific parameters it needs to be, but then nothing ever happens. Like, why didn't they? Maybe there's some other like secondary thing that needs to happen before they decide to.
It must remain pure
sacrifice it
through several years of its life, I think, and then if a white hair or 2 or 3 shows up and it's absolutely impure, it has to be purely red all the way through.
Wow.
yeah, we used to raise rabbits for meat, and also we genetically selected. That was all Lori's part. I didn't have the brain power for it, but certainly there are people breeding to get red cows at this point. Anyways, they've made an incentive.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion on all of that stuff, and all of the stuff in Book of Revelation is that somebody wrote it down and then other people took actions to make that stuff happen.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
None of it's God's design necessarily.
And when you're trying to rely on something that God said, that just means that a person told them God said it.
Yeah, or
like
a book
Revelation.
said so. So, it's all hearsay at this point. If you want to know what God said, go ask God personally.
Yep, I was just going to say that if somebody tells you, certainly
Maybe
that
she'll give
God
you an
told them
answer.
something, go ask him and then find
Or
out.
her.
Or her.
Well,
Just
I
ask
feel
God.
like somebody might do that, and then they're like, yep, God did tell me that it's true because, well, I saw 3 doves on the street while I was walking, and I asked for a sign. Like they would just convince themselves. And it's not that I don't believe that you can actually get like signs and synchronicities from like God. I do. But I'm just saying you can also convince yourself
Oh yeah.
that things
it's
are
easy
happening.
to do.
I have a friend who she used to be like a really like fundamentalist Christian, and her parents did all kinds of really strange things to her, and like she couldn't read until she was like 12 or something, or the neighbors had to teach her. But all that to say that she always convinced herself that God wanted her to do specific things, and she would see these signs and she was like, yes, this is true. This is how I know that this is the path I'm supposed to be on. And then she saw some kind of TV show that explained how somebody can actually make somebody else believe that they're getting signs from God just by putting little things in their environment. And I was like, wait, so you're saying you believe that somebody else was doing it to you? And she's like, no, it's just that it's just as easy to do it to yourself. Like, it's like the phenomenon where, and this is the thing, some people use this to say, oh, and that means there's no such thing as synchronicity, there's no such thing as like a sign from the other side. And I'm not saying that. I believe that there is such thing as that. But imagine you just learned about type of car. Like, I didn't know a Saab existed until Matt used to be on the show, told me about them. I was like, I've never even heard of that car. And then I started seeing them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I probably was already seeing them, but it just like I looked right past it because I like wasn't familiar with it. It's just a thing that your brain does.
It is a thing.
Well, it's a thing that your brain does, and maybe also the universe interacts in a certain way, but certainly people get way too carried away with this. I've seen, like the example you're saying, somebody do that before, and it just led them to make some horrible life decisions. So it's not, I don't know, it's not necessarily God. And God's never given me a worded message either, but I feel like they're universal promptings that you can sort of hear. And
The other thing is that if you really want a certain outcome, you'll start to believe that anything means that, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, that's entirely possible too.
So when talking about this whole thing that Trump said he wants to take over Gaza, another thing that came to mind when I read about this was, okay, now I know he's joking. Like, about some things, because I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible that he really means this. We can read some of the...
I think a lot of times he'll just say wild things to get people thinking about it, and then he'll settle for something in between that makes him happy and makes everybody else happy. And he's like, see, you see what a great businessman I am?
Well, Trump tends to be a bit of a troll too, and so he does things to stir up people's ire to get them talking, because he likes to be a little controversial, it seems.
Yeah. Well, I haven't read his book, but I think that was that was the gist of it. Is like when you're making a bargain, you set the bar at impossibly high.
Yeah.
So that when after the negotiation boils down, you got something pretty good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, here's an example of one reason why I think he could not possibly be being serious. He says that the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the U.S. by Israel at the conclusion of fighting, and he added, no soldiers by the U.S. would be needed. That's one thing. And he says, if we can get a beautiful area to resettle people permanently in nice homes where they can be happy and not be shot and not be killed and not be knifed to death like what's happening in Gaza. So he's just saying he would just put them somewhere. It just is so ridiculous. I don't think it's real. He says, I believe we will have a parcel of land in Jordan, and they've said that no, they're not going to do it before and after he said this. A parcel of land in Egypt. We may have somewhere else, but I think when we finish our talks, we'll have a place where they'll live very happily. Just not going to happen. He says, we have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want it to be, and I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, like, it's going to be like a resort, like the French Riviera.
Well, this is something that his son-in-law has been discussing for a while.
In Gaza?
Yeah.
I did not know that. What the heck?
Yep.
There's no way that the Palestinians are just going to agree to this. And
Of course
we've
not.
already talked about the whole religious aspect, but also that it would have to be a better place to go. And I don't think that Israel and Jordan want to do it. So where are you going to put them? So it says here, this is just Al Jazeera talking, the idea of removing millions of people to build a luxury resort in a war-torn area is widely seen as impractical, detached from reality, and morally unacceptable. According to, the director of the Nazarene Center for Israel Studies at UCLA. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it seems kind of not right to me.
Yeah, and it also seems not right. Like, people who we know don't want to leave, being forced to leave.
It's like some people have likened it to the Trail of Tears that went on in the 19th century in America, which I don't know if that's going to be the case in this situation, but it's certainly...
Yeah, that was just a relocation, right?
Yeah.
That was definitely a relocation by force.
Yeah, what are they going to set up Palestinian refugee, or what are they calling it? Reservations.
Reservations, Yeah, it's basically like he's like, we'll find a nice parcel of land with beautiful homes. Like, oh, that's just like the reservations. They didn't want to go to reservations.
Yeah.
They got forced to.
Yep.
The Trail of Tears is a really perfect example. So it says, what has the response been? But back to like the point I was making, I think that it's somehow a joke, and I don't really know what the end would be. But one thing I thought of immediately was, well, Netanyahu, like, a month or two before the war, he was at some kind of conference and he was like showing this map, and it said like the new map of Israel, and it like covered over the west, the Gaza parts, the West Bank and the other part of Gaza, and it was all Israel now instead. And it showed like on this little map he was showing on the stage in front of whoever at some kind of a convention, what's the word for it? A canal going right through. It's not the West Bank, it's the other one, because for whatever reason the West Bank is in the east. Oh wait, no, it was the West Bank. Okay. Yeah, because it's the one. So anyways, he showed
I think
like
the other
plans.
one you're thinking of is Gaza.
Oh, okay, so it's Gaza and the West Bank. Well, Netanyahu had plans to just, obviously people can't live in a canal. He had plans to put a canal where people, like millions of people currently are living, and he was just showing it off in public. So he had ridiculous plans like this, right? It's almost like, is Trump making fun of that? Because one thing that people said in the articles, because I didn't really watch the video, I read articles about it, was that Netanyahu standing behind him looked completely shocked and like his eyes widened when Trump said all this, like he wasn't expecting it.
Right.
Is what people, interpreted from his face, not that
right.
we know
the first
that,
time I heard about this, I was watching it, and it was while I was watching a different program that showed clips, and it was showing this clip of the press conference, and Netanyahu was there, and it had the camera on both of them when Trump announced that he thought it would be a good idea to buy the place, and it didn't seem like Netanyahu took that very well.
Interesting.
I mean, maybe I don't know his body language or something, but he seemed a little surprised by it.
Clearly he wanted it for himself, so why would he agree, like, yeah, you know what, we'll just send the Gazans out, which they would have already done if they could. We'll just send them out and then give it to the U.S. Like, he wants to build a canal there. And by the way, it's not the only time that Israel has said something about building a canal there. There was a 1996 commissioned paperwork written up where Israel had some like American scientists, or I don't know, college people, I don't remember if it was specifically scientists, whatever, write up for them, hey, tell us all the logistics, what would we need to do in order to put a canal where Gaza is, or wait, where the West Bank is. So it's not like that was them actually, like, it wasn't like a bill that they were about to do it, but they were investigating what would need to be done. And the paperwork, by the way, said this is basically impossible. There'd be over 1 million people that would have to be relocated, and so much stuff would have to be taken down. You can't do it. So it's something that a lot of people say that's probably why they're doing this genocide. They're like, well, we can't relocate them. We'll just like kill them. And they had to have a perfect excuse.
They've done a whole bunch of versions of this sort of, genociding the Palestinians. They've done it several times before, sometimes on larger scales, sometimes on smaller scales. And I forgot exactly who made the quote. Might have been Ben Gurion. I don't know. One of the officials in the government there, though, like to refer to it as occasionally they had to go and mow the lawn.
Oh my God.
They're very crass about it. And
wow.
Is it like...
And they've been known to do things like cut down families' pride and joy trees that they've been growing for many generations and won't grow back ever again.
Wow.
They just cut them right down.
What the heck? That's sad.
Yeah. They are not nice to the people who already live there.
And they have... Actually, we're always saying that the United States has the worst incarceration rate. I think if we were going by, like, equal playing field as far as, like, they are a much smaller population, I think the Gazans are much worse because it's something like 80% of all men that are adults ever have been in jail before. They just, like, put all of the men basically in prison for silly little things.
Wow.
Like the Israelis do it. Not like the Gazans doing it to themselves or anything.
Yeah. I guess they they like to set up temporary, temporary border movements, and they'll just like move a chain link fence around basically, and they'll say you can't go within certain distances, but they just keep encroaching right up on where people live, and then pretty soon you got one of these things in your backyard, and Israeli soldiers standing there, and if you even look at them, they'll shoot you in the face or whatever they want to do because there's nothing to there's no repercussion really.
It's really, really scary. And stuff like that happens to people over multiple generations, and then the people that kind of want to defend this happening will say something to you like, Bonnie, you don't understand. These people, these Gazans are monsters. And it's like, well, what if you couldn't leave your house? Like, for generations, and all your male relatives were in prison, and you had no prospect of leaving or doing any better. Like, you would probably become very stupid.
Yeah.
I
think
not
a lot
civilized.
of people who say the Israelis or the Gazans or the Palestinians are monsters usually use things like the Hamas propaganda that goes out, and I don't think every Palestinian believes Hamas propaganda.
Well, Hamas was basically in a roundabout way created by the Israeli government anyway.
Yeah.
Interesting. So apparently it's a way to get
It's a
people
fully
pitted against each
it's
other.
a fully controlled situation.
Huh.
And even like the thing that sparked off this whole war was very, very suspect.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing is, if this was happening to you, like what's happening to the Palestinians now is happening to your people, wouldn't you kind of start to feel like, hey, maybe Hamas isn't that bad and it's actually Israel? Like, they're kind of, it's blowback. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he doesn't believe the US has a peace plan ready for his country. He's calling for the US, Europe and Ukraine to work together in efforts to end the war with Russia. It comes after US President Donald Trump suggested peace talks could begin imminently after he spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin. At the Munich Security Conference, President Zelensky says his talks with Vice President J.D. Vance there will be constructive.
They are our partners, and I respect our partnership. And I have my questions, where I think it will be interesting to share my thoughts and to hear Vice President's thoughts. I think it's very important to work together with teams. And when I had a conversation with President Trump, we didn't have enough time to discuss all the things about security and etc.
French President Emmanuel Macron says peace that is a capitulation for Ukraine would be bad news for everyone, including the United States. Sarah Coates reports from Paris.
President Macron says only Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky should negotiate on behalf of his country with Russia to end the more than 3-year war. Mr. Trump says US and Russian officials will meet on Friday in Munich and that Ukraine is also invited, but a spokesperson for President Zelensky says the talks with Russians in Munich are not expected, adding that a common position needs to be adopted before any talks are held. Sarah Coates, Paris.
Ukraine says a Russian drone attack has hit the radiation shelter which protects Chernobyl's damaged nuclear reactor. The United Nations nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, says radiation levels there remain normal and stable. Moscow is denying claims it struck Chernobyl, the site of the world's worst nuclear accident in 1986. The Pope is being admitted to hospital in Rome for treatment and tests for bronchitis. He was treated at the same hospital 2 years ago for bronchitis, spending 3 nights there. Hamas is expected to name 3 Israeli hostages set to be freed on Saturday after fears the Gaza ceasefire deal was on the brink of collapse. Giles Gibson reports from Tel Aviv.
Since the last hostages and Palestinian prisoners were released just under a week ago, the structural integrity of the ceasefire deal has been pushed to its limits. On Monday, Hamas announced it was pausing hostage releases indefinitely, accusing Israel of violating the terms of the agreement. Israel then threatened to end the ceasefire entirely, putting its military on high alert. But after crisis talks in Egypt, mediators now believe Hamas will go ahead and name 3 hostages who are set to be released on Saturday, in exchange for more Palestinians being held in Israeli prisons. Giles Gibson, Tel Aviv.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number here you can call. That's 603-283-6160, and I'd like to thank James for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that James went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks to James and everyone who supports us. And again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of becoming an amplifier. So thank you to James, and we really do appreciate everyone who helps. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Riley.
And Stu.
And we have a caller on the line. In the last segment, we were talking about Trump wanting to buy Gaza, and at this point we're just wondering if he's trolling or what's going on. But what did you want to talk about today, Turd Ferguson in Pennsylvania? What's on your mind?
Well, Deadmau5 is probably my single favorite artist right now. I love the song Escape that he did in collaboration with Cascade and Hala. Hala's voice is just so incredibly sexy, and her vocal line over the deep house beat that Deadmau5 and Cascade created is just absolutely entrancing.
Is Cascade the lady that sings like, evacuate the dance floor?
I don't know. That might have been him. I mean, he's one of the most famous DJs in the world.
Oh, it's a man. Never mind.
This is the first time I've heard any of those names.
Yeah, me too.
Well, Dead Mouse I've heard of, but honestly I never really like listened to it, and I don't know who. What did you say, Hala?
Yeah, Hala, who is a very sexy vocalist who probably should have been a teen pop star, but
what makes her sexy?
Say what? What was that, Riley?
What makes her sexy?
Her body and her voice and her face.
Wait, what's the song called?
What?
What's the song called?
The song is called Escape, and yeah, it's probably one of my favorite tunes right now. And music is an interesting thing, and for the last like 10 years or so, there's become this divide between women and men, and them sort of resenting each other, which really disappoints me. I think that the relationship between men and women was a lot better back in the day when women were grinding up on men on the dance floor. You know what I mean? I think everybody was a lot less resentment toward each other, quite frankly.
Maybe they were all less pent up too.
Yeah, well, maybe, but I've made a decision recently that much like how I decided that I was going to get sober, and then I did, and then I decided that I was going to get six-pack abs, and I did. Now I've decided that I'm going to be the greatest music producer who's ever lived, and I mean greater than Dead Mouse, greater than Dr. Luke, greater than George Martin or Rick Rubin. I will be number one, and you watch me, because I've made the decision, and it's all about first making the decision, which in my opinion is actually the hard part, and then manifesting it.
Well, I gotta say, I think that hip hop and rap is one of the reasons people don't like to dance now, because like, how do you dance to that crap? I went to this like night party at Porkfest, and it's like at first they were playing dang, what is that song called? Where it's like Mr. Sexy Beat, that song.
Her?
No, it's like Mr. Sexy Beat or Mr. something beat, whatever. That song's so good. And then they just started playing like rap music. I was like, what do you even do to this? Ugh, like boring.
Yeah, right.
And all the Gen Z people were like dancing like so like, what's the word? Like just like, I'm not trying to say you have to dance sexually, but like not even sensual. Like just like they were just acting out like TikTok dances next to each other. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, like line dancing. Oh my God, that's so stupid.
And honestly, to me, like I've never really got to experience like going to a club and wanting to dance with like males, because it's so awful. Like you don't understand. Like I've never enjoyed going to a straight bar where dancing existed. Like that's why I like gay clubs, because they play music you can dance to that's awesome, and there's just not like gross guys there. Honestly, I don't know how you freaking fix this, but if your music can fix it, turd, then good for you, and I wish you well.
Yeah, well, thank you. And let me just respond to a couple of things you said. I mean, first of all, there is some rap that you can dance to. Nelly's Hot in Her is a very danceable song. And that song off Country Grammar, I forget what the name of it is right off, talking about rolling in the Benz, you know what I'm saying?
No.
Okay, well, you should I forget what the name of the
but I
song
do
is,
agree with like that song Hot in Here. Something like that would be better, but that's like from the 90s, right? The music that they make nowadays sucks.
2000s, but also even like Sugar by Flo Rida.
Oh yeah.
Where he takes the Eiffel 65 melody and puts it in his song. Even that song is very danceable.
Yeah, and it's also old at this point. That's what I'm saying. Like, try to dance to like mumble rap. You can't. It's horrible. It's disgusting.
Well, that music is terrible anyway, and that's going to be one of the first things that I fix when I become a famous music producer for Universal or Sony or even Warner Brothers. Although Warner Brothers seems to be putting the message to me that they want nothing to do with me.
And then the other thing is a lot of the music that like you and I both like, turd. I like it, but I would be like turned off if a straight guy liked it.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know what to tell you about that.
There has to be more like really good music that men and women both like to enjoy together, because right now...
Well, Teenage Dream is an amazing, probably the greatest record of all time, in my opinion. And that's a very danceable album. And
also old at this point. That's like this whole point. Like even like me in my young 20s, like Teenage Dream would have been like a throwback song. unfortunate truth.
Well, it might be a throwback, but it's still. I mean, there are some songs that are just timeless, and I bet if you put on "Teenage Dream" on a dance floor in a club, all the fat feminine booties would start shaking, and that would draw the males. The fat booties would bring the boys to the yard, if you know what I'm saying. And
gotta bring out that
that's what I intend to do, by the way. I want to get men and women dancing with each other again and lower that resentment that they have toward each other. And that's really going to make the world a better place, in my opinion.
Here's a great example. One time I was dancing with my friend who was a girl and my friend who was a gay guy at what's it called? Barbella's in Austin. It's a gay club that they do Fridays or Thursdays, I think it's called. Anyways, and there was this like guy that we were like kind of dancing with for a while. It was like fun, and then I just realized he was straight, and then I realized he was like ugly and weird, and it was like, whoa, get away from me. I just like, that's what I'm trying to say. How do you fix that? Like, how do you make people like first make themselves not be a weirdo and then go out and try to dance with people? Well, it's also just like, whoa, wait, I thought you were gay. It's like implicit of you being here, you know?
Well, Bonnie, I don't think that you were ever really properly approached by a handsome young man when you were younger. And that's probably why you feel that way. Because back when I was a kid, if you went up to a young female with very perky young breasts at a high school dance and asked her to dance, that was considered quite ballsy back in the day.
Oh, I'm sure.
So
well,
maybe
I remember those days.
As a high school dance is different than gay bar. And the other thing is, like, the only high school dance I ever went to was with my boyfriend at the time. That was, like, so nice. I'm so happy it's, like, the only one I ever went to. And that I had a good prom and everything, but that's not really the same. It's not, like, being approached. Yeah, anytime I went to a straight bar, I always tell this story on there if this subject comes up, which I know, like, Riley and Stu don't really care about. But
well, by the way, when you say straight bar, do you mean a straight club? Because there aren't too many bars where you can really dance in.
Yeah, no, I really only like to go to places where you can dance. Like, I don't like just like restaurant bars, like where you just like stand around like everywhere in New Hampshire.
So like
that's proof that there is hope, because you just said that you want to go to a place where you can dance. That's already half the battle. The other half is just getting the guys to approach the women.
So
and
this is the story though. Like, one time I went somewhere with my friend and the same gay guy, and there was like this guy that like had to like shimmy past me and my friends to go wherever he was going, and he literally whispered into my ear, like through my hair, all creepy. He said, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful," and then he kept going, and I was just like, "That what? Like they don't know how to do anything." That was so creepy and gross. So I was like, "Ugh," like I would never want to talk to him.
What would be a better approach?
Like to actually start a conversation with me and not just keep walking and not whisper in my ear because of the fact that I was in a position where I had to be that close to you because you had to shimmy past me.
Okay.
Yeah, so you've already mentioned, kind of outlined some of the problem, and I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you guys because of the waterfall in my hot tub. It's just loud. But the problem is that, well, I mean, guys were never even taught how to approach girls, especially not the new generation, and B, the whole point of a dance club is to kind of eliminate the awkwardness of that first approach. Because, I mean, obviously men are attracted to sight, women are attracted to touch. So when you just go up to a girl in a club and ask her to dance, you've already broken that barrier of touching. So you're already significantly more of the way than you would be if you had to sort of strike up a conversation and not come off as boring. And I think that that sort of redefining the modern genres of music, recreating them, improving them, etc., is really going to help sort of reproach and break that barrier.
Another thing I gotta say is I have said this like on Twitter, and people have been like, "What? You didn't live in a city where there are like raves?" And it's like, okay, raves are like honestly cringe, and everybody that I've ever known that just like goes to raves all the time, it's like it's not really the same thing as like what Turd's describing, but. Everywhere that I grew up, because I grew up in 3 different areas of the country, so it wasn't like a thing where like people would get together at somebody's house and like have a dance party. It's like basically that like almost doesn't happen. Like there was
well, yeah, and I do think that this might be also a slightly different cultural like geographical divide, because as you know, I grew up in Maryland, and Ocean City is in Maryland, and Club H2O is in Ocean City. It's an under 21 club, and that place was amazing. And
yeah,
I mean, there was obviously no alcohol involved, no alcohol allowed, but they'd have these sort of non-alcoholic Jello shooters that they'd pass around, and they glowed, and all the girls were they dressed up and looked very pretty, and everybody, and they kind of dressed up in neon colors. And there was a very sort of small, short, narrow, shallow stage at the front where, one or two girls, maybe the hottest girls there, could go up on stage and dance and grind up on maybe one or two guys up on the stage. And it's created this whole sort of romantic, laid-back atmosphere. And H2O, from what I understand, is still there and still quite happening. So this might be a geographical divide.
But this is the other thing. Like, in San Antonio, for example, I live like out in the suburbs, but there was one place called Cowboys that like lots of people my age went to, but it was like country, and I had I really believed that I just like absolutely hated country at the time, and I don't anymore, and I do regret it. And I didn't even think I liked to dance because of stuff like this. Like, I wouldn't have gone to a country bar. And then when I got older, I learned about like deeper into San Antonio. There's a place, I don't even remember what it's called now. It's next to Pegasus on the gay strip, but it's not a gay place, and it's an under 21 bar. Ariana Grande went there. I
have been to country dance clubs, and I've been to dance clubs that are I don't know. I didn't enjoy either, but I'd rather hang out at the country dance club. I know that.
I think nowadays I would agree.
I totally disagree. And Bonnie, that's probably partially what shaped your opinion. I would absolutely despise a country dance club.
It's not an enjoyable place, don't get me wrong. It's just the other place is really much
If I got
worse.
to control what country music played, that'd be different, though, because I've been to plenty of country bars, and honestly, it was kind of fun because everybody's just, like, nice, and it's, like, more... So if I wanted to go to a place that was a bar where you more, like, just stand around talking, I would actually enjoy a lot of country bars in Texas where everybody's drinking Dos Equis, and it's not really for dancing, but there probably is a section for dancing. But what am I trying to say? But if I had to go to a dancing place for country music, I'd love to be in charge of the music and it be mostly like Faith Hill.
Listen, country music sucks.
Yeah, it does.
Balls.
But what about I think you'd like a lot of Faith Hill.
Wait, what did you say?
You need to look up Just Breathe by Faith Hill. I think you'd actually like it.
Just Breathe by somebody. I missed the artist, but let me just say this. And if you put a link in Element Matrix after the call, I'll check it out. But I was just going to say I really dislike country music, and this is coming from a guy who loves music. Okay, and I really just do not have a soft spot in any way whatsoever for country. And let me just say that I am a 36-year-old man now. If I were to go to a Southern dance club where maybe they weren't playing country music, but there were a bunch of, hot blonde, young women, young as in like in their early 20s, college age, wearing short Daisy Duke booty shorts and maybe some cowboy boots, but they were playing some house music, some pop music, maybe Sugar by Flo Rida, then it might be something I could get down with. But if there's any country music playing, I just want to put my fingers down my throat and disabuse myself of the toxins in my stomach and then walk right out.
I don't even know if it's called Just Breathe, but anyways, I'll send you that song. But the other thing is that I think the worst thing about country music, and I don't know if everybody's going to disagree with me, I think the worst thing is that it's like mostly men singing, and honestly, I highly prefer women singing. What do you guys think?
Yeah, well, I
definitely like women
agree with
singers.
that. I agree with
For
that.
country,
a lot
yeah.
of Deadmau5, and that's why I love Deadmau5, okay? Because a lot of Deadmau5's tracks that do have lyrics in them, now a lot of them are just straight dance mixes without lyrics, and they're just grooves, you know what I mean? Like I've been making a lot lately on my machine, but there are a lot of ones with lyrics and really catchy melodies in them, and they all, or nearly all of them, have hot young women with sexy voices singing the vocal melodies, and they're so sexual and so kinky, and they make for great dance music. And I recommend really anybody who's listening to the show right now, I don't know how many radio stations you guys are on now, but anybody that's listening to the show should just, after we get done with this call, just Google Deadmau5 and just listen to, or turn it on Apple Music or whatever you got,
or
Apple
Ecomouse.
Music Essentials or whatever, and listen to it. And I guarantee you, it will revive your taste in dance. I guarantee you.
Well, nice. Okay, well, anything else for us, Turd?
No, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Turd.
I never have really, I don't know off the top of my head any song that Deadmau5 makes, but I just know he's, super famous. There's been a lot of times where I just thought I wouldn't like a song that's just, some dance remix song, and for whatever reason, it like played on, like I'm listening to music and it just plays, and I was like, wow, that's actually like really good. But
I think I'd choose a better stage name.
Yeah.
Deadmau5. Yeah.
And it's not spelled how you would think. I don't remember how it's spelled off the top of my head. Like mouse, I think it's like spelled like it's German or something.
Oh, okay.
So, and he's the guy. Oh wait, never mind. There's another one with like a mask he always wears, and his name is Marshmallow. Yeah, see, I mixed all these people up because, oh yeah, that was going to be my point. Sometimes I'll hear a song and I'm like, whoa, that was a good like Deadmau5 type of song, but it's less memorable because there's no like personality to it. Like, if I hear a song by Taylor Swift, even if I don't like it, I'll like always remember when I hear it that that's Taylor Swift's song because I know her voice and like she has like this like personality and style. But these like DJs, like they'll make completely different songs from the last song they made, and it's like there's almost no like personality really attributed to them. It's just like they're just a DJ, and then they'll work with some pop star here and then some rap star here and like make completely different music, which is like cool that they can switch up their styles or whatever. But it makes me not be like, I couldn't possibly tell you one of those people that I've liked their song when it just played. Honestly.
Well, I don't know. I'm okay with musical artists branching out and finding out, how many different styles they can do and do whatever they want to. But a lot of times it's not good when they do, and they really should just focus on what they're good at. But
that's a good point too.
But for me, I really like albums. So like starting with song 1 and then listening through all the way to the end. Mm-hmm. And a lot of pop music and, especially rap and hip hop, they're just not conducive to that type of musical listening. You just, you're like, oh, I like this track or whatever. But
what about album listening excites you to? What about it attracts you to it? Well,
when an artist puts an album together in such a way as Pink Floyd used to do, it really kind of tells a story. Mm. And you can get that from a lot of classical pieces as well.
Okay.
If you're just listening closely.
I would say that a lot more pop musicians than you might think do that, but then there's a lot that just make like basically like, oh, I want this to go viral on TikTok, or I want it to go become a hit on the radio. And then there's just like an album that comes along with it that's like a bunch of filler crap. But someone like Lady Gaga, all of her albums are no skips, front to back. And then I totally agree that is the case with rap, but also I just don't like it anymore. For some reason, I liked a bunch of rap, like newer rap. And actually, I still love Kanye West a lot, but he definitely verges on pop. But I feel like that's definitely the case with rap. And the other day, I don't know why, I don't remember where I even saw it. I saw Heart's album called Little Queen, and I listened to it from front to back, and I was like, that was just so cool, because it was like I don't even know if I'd really say a story, but it was all a theme together. It all went together. It gave me this like vibe all day, like Renaissance witchy vibe.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like watching a good movie as opposed to a good TikTok video, if that makes sense.
That's definitely true.
It's just more engaging to me.
Yeah, definitely true. Well, it's going to kind of be hard to make even a segue to this, so I'm just going to say let's change the subject back to what we were talking about, because we had more to say about Trump saying that he wanted to buy Gaza. And you were telling us, I don't see it in this article here, Stu, but you were telling us that Netanyahu gave Trump a present for this, or after this?
As part of his visit to the White House, Netanyahu gifted Trump a golden pager, which I thought was very interesting, and immediately my mind jumped to the Hamas pagers story, and how it looked like Israeli tech companies set these pagers up in the first place. And so I was just wondering if that's kind of a warning shot to Trump, or like what. I didn't hear much else about it. I didn't look into it much. I only heard that it happened, and I saw, a picture of it.
That's immediately what I thought of too. I was like, wait, wasn't there something with like because nobody uses a pager anymore?
Right, and that's a strange thing to just, I don't know, put on a. So it's on a sort of a plaque. It's a segment of a tree, like a plate cut
One of
out
the
of a tree.
trees that they broke down in some Gazan's front yard.
Probably a
Yeah.
very, very ancient and precious tree to somebody.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's got this golden pager mounted to it, and the I think the plaque says something like Trump, our greatest ally, our greatest friend, something like that.
Hmm.
Well, there also is a lot of religious imagery around Trump too. I mean, the evangelical Christians and the Jewish Zionist movement. There's a lot of religiosity surrounding Trump, as though he's some God-chosen person to rule the United States or something.
There sure is.
I heard recently, I honestly shouldn't have brought it up because I don't remember what the whole thing was, but I heard recently that Trump did something to somewhat sever his commitment to like always doing whatever Israel said. Did you guys hear about that?
No.
Okay. Maybe I'll look into it on the break, but here's a quote from somebody talking about how they would never leave Gaza. He said, it says, Imad al-Qassas, a 6-year-old father of 6, said, "Where would we even go?"
Hold on, you said a 6-year-old father?
60-year-old, sorry.
60-year-old.
A 6-year-old father of 6. So, where would we even go? Even if the border crossings were opened and voluntary migration was offered, I would never leave, no matter how difficult my situation is. That's what I'm saying. I can't imagine anywhere I've ever lived saying, no matter if they were dropping bombs, I would never leave New Hampshire. See what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
It's clearly something bigger to them than just, it's their home. But I'm also a military brat, and I don't, like, have a home, so maybe that's just me. Would you guys, I mean, you guys left Utah, so obviously there's no such thing as telling you guys, like, no matter what your situation is, you wouldn't leave.
Right. I mean,
You're home.
but some families don't like to leave places they've called home for generations, and so it makes it difficult.
Yeah, but the thing is, like for example, my grandpa, he died last year, and he was definitely like, I would not leave Alabama, I want to die here.
Yeah.
But what if the situation was like, well, you're going to get bombed? I think that would have changed.
It's a matter of alternatives for me, like what is the threat and then what's the alternative, and maybe it's just not good for Gazans.
Yeah, that's true. What would he said? Even if voluntary migration was offered, but then again, it's like we were saying, Jordan and Egypt don't want Gazans to go there or Palestinians to go there, so obviously, like, they might not be treated very well. So,
Yeah.
well, 603-283-6160 is the phone number to call with whatever's on your mind. More coming up with Free Talk Live. That number again is 603-283-6160.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees have made Bitcoin useless for purchases, but Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction, and its features ensure Dash is undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their Chainlocks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Big thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
How many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'd rather keep their clients in the dark. There are too many lawyer jokes to count. However, there are some lawyers with more noble intentions. At the Institute for Justice, we bring the light to our clients. We are a non-profit public interest law firm with clear values and principles. At IJ, we fight for those whose most basic rights are denied by the government. Visit our website today at ij.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. After sharply denouncing some European leaders, US Vice President J.D. Vance spoke with the Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. Neither of them gave away any tangible progress from the talks towards a peace plan with Russia. And concern is mounting in Europe over proposed peace talks between Russia and Ukraine put forward by the US President Donald Trump. French President Emmanuel Macron is the latest leader to speak out, saying peace that is a capitulation would be bad for everyone, including the US. Sarah Coates has more.
President Macron says only Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky should negotiate on behalf of his country with Russia to end the more than 3-year war. This is after it came out that President Trump has been speaking in private with Russian President Putin to negotiate a ceasefire. Mr. Trump says US and Russian officials will meet on Friday in Munich and that Ukraine is also invited, but a spokesperson for President Zelensky says the talks with Russians in Munich are not expected, adding that a common position needs to be adopted before any talks are held. Sarah Coates, Paris.
Well, US President Donald Trump has announced a new round of tariffs this week, which will be enacted reciprocally, according to how the US perceives it's being treated by partner trading countries. It could be particularly costly for EU nations such as Ireland and Germany, which have a high trade surplus with the US. However, India is working out a deal to avoid a trade penalty after a meeting in Washington between President Trump and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
We can make up the difference very easily with the deficit with the sale of oil and gas, LNG, of which we have more than anybody in the world. The Prime Minister and I also reached an important agreement on energy that will restore the United States as a leading supplier of oil and gas to India. It will be hopefully their number one supplier, and the groundbreaking development for U.S. nuclear industry. India is also reforming its laws to welcome U.S. nuclear technology, which is at the highest level, into the Indian market.
Ishan Garg reports.
What we are now seeing is actually closer cooperation between India and the US, and that relates particularly to the defense deals that have been announced. This time around, we are seeing an agreement under which India and US are going to increase joint production of defense equipment. They are going to make technology transfers possible, and this is something that analysts have been saying, that it shows that the trust between the two countries is actually building. We've also seen that despite there being clear tensions on the trade and tariff front, and the foreign ministry also says that in the next few months we're going to be seeing a lot more American imports coming in, as India is very ready to relax some of its trade and tariff barriers.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Uganda has received an additional $2 million support from the World Health Organization to counter an Ebola outbreak. The East African country has reported another 9 cases, including 1 death, while another 250 people are in isolation. Isabel Nakira reports.
Uganda is battling the deadly Sudan Ebola virus as well as the Mpox outbreaks. The WHO warns the increase in cases in both diseases is heightening the rise of trans-border transmission. The Minister of Health says the situation is under control and the country is a safe destination for tourists. Isabel Nakiria in Kampala.
TikTok is back on app stores in the United States after President Donald Trump postponed enforcing a ban of the popular social media platform. A proposed law passed by Congress, signed by former US President Joe Biden and upheld by a Supreme Court ruling, had ordered TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance to sell the application or else face the ban in the United States. Benji Hire reports.
Donald Trump says he's still working on a deal to secure a sale of TikTok. He had once supported banning it in his first term. Both his and the Biden administration argued it could be exploited by China as a tool for spying or political manipulation, claims China denies. But the US president now confesses he has a warm spot in his heart for the app, touting the billions of views his content attracted during last year's presidential campaign. The short-form video service, used by more than 170 million Americans, briefly went dark last month stateside, but President Trump then signed an executive order granting it an extension until April 5th. Benji Hire, Washington.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was The Week in Review.
This is the Onion Week in Review. Thousands of outraged meth addicts urged the federal government this week to address the nation's growing spider epidemic. During a marathon 72-hour meeting under the Roosevelt Bridge Monday, tweakers from across the nation drafted a 45,000-word proposal to kill all the acid-shooting spiders before they develop the powers of mind control or, God forbid, flight.
We can't grow these spiders any longer. The government has to... There's a spider there!
The addicts have agreed that the best temporary solution would be for the government to issue them large quantities of methamphetamine and steel wool. A local daddy was put in his bye-bye box Tuesday so that he could go on a long vacation with the birds and clouds in the sky. The daddy, who was once tall and strong and liked going to the hospital to play with their fun machines, was reportedly put in the bye-bye box after weeks of being sleepy all the time and never finishing his din-din. Family had come in from all over to watch daddy get dropped inside a cool underground fort full of dirt and sand, where he'll be tonight instead of being home to play Chutes and Ladders.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and that means you can call 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And we've been podcasting since podcasts began, but we're launching a new podcast anyway. Our new podcast is a 30 to 45-minute show releasing once a week, and you can find it at freetalkcast.com. It's brought to you by the same people who bring you Free Talk Live, and we'd love for you to check it out. The existing radio archive isn't going anywhere. This is just a new show designed from the start to be a podcast, so check it out at freetalkcast.com. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Riley,
and Stu.
And we have a caller on the line, so let's just go right into the phone calls. We have Paul in Arizona. Paul, what's on your mind?
Hi, well, I was just curious if you got a call the first hour about taxes.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been trying to get this gentleman who runs something called the Freedom Law School, Payman Mottahedeh, to call in because he's got some really interesting information. And I think it would be, if he became one of the regular callers, I think it would be great for him and your listeners and everybody. But anyway, the bottom line is that the great revelation, not only is the government lying to us about COVID and lying to us about wars and lying to us about, the Federal Reserve and God knows what, they're also, guess what? The IRS is also lying to us. Who'd have thought,
Yep.
And once again, I'm not being, this is not a commercial. I just like this guy, and he's one of the few people standing up and not getting prosecuted. Freedom Law School, and it's called livefreenow.org is the website.
Is Freedom Law School like a YouTube channel or something?
Yes, he's on YouTube. I recommend. He has a weekly live discussion for about an hour on various subjects, and he's got a mailing list and all that stuff. And not connected to him at all is another gentleman by the name of David Champion, who wrote a book called Income Tax Shattering the Myths. And I've been trying to get him to call in here. And I don't know why it's like herding cats to get these people to call in.
Maybe sometimes I think it's like that's a late show. I don't know. Maybe some people are, eating or something.
Plus, it's weekend, so it shows. So people are doing whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'm just here to speak out. Give my 2 cents. But yeah, Dave Champion's book, Income Tax: Shattering the Myths. He has a podcast called Dr. Reality, drreality.com. And he talks about the income tax. He talks about government, and he also talks about health because he wrote a book called Body Science about health.
Oh, really cool.
Anyway, I'm trying to get these people to call in because they're a lot more eloquent on their subjects than I am.
Can you give us maybe some kind of short example of things that one of them says that you like?
Well, basically, the law as written exempts 95+% of the population.
I've heard that same thing from Bear Arms. A lot of them say that the tax law only applies to federal government employees, and there is some really convincing evidence of it. And one of the people that goes that route, he's also gotten money sent back to him from the IRS.
I think I know the way this argument goes, that the income tax is only applicable to United States citizens, and you're only a United States citizen if you are a citizen of DC, basically, or a federal employee.
Yep, there's destinationfreedom.org is Christopher Gronsky. He goes that route, but Bear Arms, the one I was talking about, his is even a little different than that because I remember asking, it's like the 14th Amendment citizen thing, and his is a little different. It's that he found out that there's a difference between the federal income tax and the tax on federal income, and I forget exactly how those things are phrased in the law, but the one that means the tax on federal employee income is really what it is in his opinion, and he has, like I said, got money sent back to him from the IRS and definitely has not been prosecuted, and he files every year, and he just does it in a way where he explains, I didn't make any federal income tax, and he doesn't have to pay, and he's not gone to prison. And he's like a doctor. He makes money. It's not like he's one of those people that just sits around doing nothing, and he's like, I didn't have to pay taxes. He's a doctor.
Well, I've gone to the Freedom Law School website here, and it says one of the steps they want you to take is to file and pay income taxes only if your congressman can show you the law that requires you to file and pay income tax. And to my mind, if you require them to show you the law that requires you to pay, there really isn't one. And
that's the point.
Even the IRS, when it comes down to the nitty gritty, they'll tell you, sure, it's a voluntary tax, but you volunteered by
filing.
And then they'll trot out some things that they call evidence, such as driver's license, passport. Use
they
of
didn't do that at Ian's.
Maybe use of the credit system. I can't remember exactly what the things are, but
I never really thought about this. My husband is in prison right now, partially because of tax charges, and it just occurred to me that they never did anything like that. Look, you applied for a passport or you applied for an ID. To my memory, I don't think they did that. They just kind of brought up an IRS lady that said, well, by our guesstimations, this is how much he would owe if he would have filed, and he didn't file, so it's failure to file. That's all they did at Ian's. But I don't know, I just thought of that. That's another thing that they do though.
Yeah, willful failure to file. It's kind of like charging people with resisting arrest when they haven't committed a crime.
Exactly.
Well,
it is the same.
Yeah. And I've been, watching this for a while. There's been people trotting this ground for many, many years. Irwin Schiff was one of the first ones. I personally went to Larkin Rose's trial 20 years ago in Philadelphia. And I personally witnessed that trial. And basically, the government did not present one shred of evidence that he owed a dime. All of their witnesses basically talked to the jury and said, well, we told him he should have filed and paid.
Wow.
That was their entire argument.
Wow. So bad. All they need is a jury to be dumb enough and want to go home enough to say guilty. It's they don't actually have to have a concrete defense, or
That was their whole argument, and of course, he was prevented from presenting any evidence from the book he wrote. Because no, we can't do that, and if he had a very limited ability to actually quote the law, because it says, well, no, you you can't talk about the law in my courtroom.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But
You know,
yeah, to my experience, that's the way courtrooms goes. It's very much just make up the rules as we go along because you all went to public school and you all know that the truth is whatever the authority at the front of the room says it is.
Yep.
Yeah. Now there have been trials over the years that have gone in a better direction. I remember there was a guy, and his name was Willie something or other. I don't remember, but basically they tried to railroad him, and he kept saying, "Well, except I can't find anywhere where it says I'm obligated to pay." And so when the jury went into deliberations, they looked through all the paperwork and they went, we don't see it either. And so
some thinking people
sent a note back to the judge saying, we're missing something here. Can you show us what this law is that Willie kept trying to ask about? And the judge tersely returned, "Well, you have been given all the information you're going to get,
Wow.
And the jury looked at each other and went, "Really? Could it possibly be true?" And they said, "Well, why should we send this guy to prison when we can't even find the evidence?" And they came back and said not guilty.
Awesome.
And, the judge practically shit a brick because,
Oh, sorry. You can't say that on the air. If I had to dump that. I know.
I'm sorry.
You didn't mean to. It's okay. But no, that's a really interesting story. Thank you for the call, by the way. I wrote down the names of those websites for people to go check it out. To go check out those websites. Did you guys write it down too? It was livefreenow.org, and the other one was the Freedom Law School that you can find on YouTube, and then Dr. Reality for David Champion.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the call, Paul.
I just think all these tax law loophole things are really interesting. I've never tried them myself. I like to try them, but I don't know. We'll see.
Well, there's a lot of things about tax law that people don't know. Like, people think you're required to file every year, but they only require you to file if they figure that you owe them money. Otherwise, they don't care if you file.
Yeah, I've convinced plenty of my friends to not file, who it didn't seem like they were going to have to owe the government money, like just people who have like little like kind of jobs just to get by type of people. I've convinced 3 people not to file, so I'm kind of proud of that.
And you can skip filing and you can back file for up to 3 years.
So we have another caller on the line, Jet, somewhere in the West. Jet, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Well, I just happened to tune in and heard you talking about taxes, and that's one of my favorite topics. There's a movie, you might recall. It's called Freedom to Fascism. Larkin Rose had put out CDs way back when. I distributed a bunch of them called the 841 Argument, which essentially outlines that by the tax code, there are only about 5 or 6 entities that are required. And that is non-resident aliens, foreign corporations, agents of corporations, contractors of the federal government, employees of the federal government, and protectorate states. And the reasoning for that is that taxation under the Constitution can only exist in 2 forms. One is as an excise tax, and one is as an apportionment tax. An apportionment meaning that everyone pays the same. The excise tax is a tax upon a privilege, and of course, we can probably all agree that earning a living is not a privilege.
Yeah.
It's a right.
But they kind of say that they can tax those groups you listed because they have like privileges from being like kind of given favor from the government. Is that what it is? Like they get to use the government's like.
Yes. It's a privilege to work for the government. It's a privilege to be a protectorate of the U.S. government. It's a privilege to be a contractor to the government. So that's how they're getting away with that nonsense. But what I like to do, anybody brings up the concept of taxation, I simply ask them a question. Can you show me any obligation whatsoever? This
sounds like that worked in that that trial that the guy just told us about.
Yes, but mostly it doesn't work because people live in a willful ignorance. And they, if brought into a jury situation, they're simply wrestling with this in their mind, but they end up typically resolving it by saying, well, if I have to pay, then he has to pay. And if he didn't file, then obviously he's guilty of willfully not filing. But what they don't understand in that particular case is that a willful failure to file has to have three essential elements. Number one, the obligation to file. Number two, the understanding that you are obligated to file. And then, of course, three, your willful failure to file. But the average citizen is not going to be able to experience that kind of logic to be able to follow that through by saying, well, first of all, the very crux of the matter is there an obligation? And of course, there's no obligation, because think about this. How can someone just magically obligate you to a debt? Can Walmart just send you a bill and say you haven't paid us, for so long? It just bothers me. And of course, I'm not bragging about this, but the fact is that once I discovered many of these things well over 40 years ago, I just stopped playing the game. Now, one thing to note, there are a couple of different types of people who are, let's say, targeted by this federal mafia, and that is someone who's like Larken Rose or Irwin Schiff or Dave Champion, those people who stand up and speak the truth, because they need to shut these people up. So they will create problems for them. They'll create bogus charges, of course. Now, the other type of person is someone who has a great deal of assets, someone who has not contributed to the mafia, but yet they have assets that the mafia can go over and go after.
Yep.
So the average individual, I keep telling people, the average individual is pretty safe from being corralled, because they're not going to spend more money on you than they can get from you, and probably less than that.
Yeah, and that's why I think that a lot of people really... Oh, sorry. I think a lot of people really should just stop filing at all, because I don't think the government would bother going after them. And I know the government hired a whole bunch more IRS agents, but I kind of think maybe that was at least partially to scare people.
Well, these two primary forms, the 1099 or the W-9 and the W-4, right? They don't apply to the average individual. They only apply to a very short number of people that I mentioned before.
Well, the problem is then you just feel like you have to fill it out if you want to get some job at some corporation near your house or whatever. And then you fill it out, and then you're basically self-identifying as someone that it applies to, and then they can go after you. So that's kind of the problem. It's if you could just, if you can find an under-the-table job, great, but it is so much harder than even when just people were kids in the 80s. I think it's so much harder. I have multiple friends. Yeah, I think the government's just encroaching so much more all the time. And I'm not saying it's impossible. Obviously, it's possible. I think that...
Well, there's this one fast. That's how the whole system works. Okay, these people in this thing we call the government, I call them the federal mafia, they put pressure on the businesses who then put pressure on the individual.
And they had to cut down on how many small businesses there are, and they did that so well during COVID. Because if you're just a small business and you don't rely on most of your a bunch of help coming from the federal government or something, then you were less easy to control. So they didn't want that. Plus, people could, make wealth for themselves and their family if they were able to just have a business. So they were no, we're going to get rid of that. In Texas, one of the only places you could go to grocery shop during COVID was Walmart and H-E-B, which is a huge corporation mostly in Texas. And it was like, there's no reason that it's safer to go to H-E-B and Walmart than to go to like Natural Grocers or something else smaller nearby. But nope, those things were closed, and it was so obvious what was happening. They wanted to make it to where people were more dependent on corporations. That's clearly happened so strong, like in the last few years. Sometimes Amazon's the only place I can find a thing, or just the best price. It doesn't make sense to go anywhere else.
This movie I mentioned, Freedom to Fascism, in there are 2 IRS agents who were offered, or let's say this one group put out this, what would you call it, an incentive to show that there was any obligation, and they offered a $50,000 reward. And of course, these 2 IRS agents said, this is going to be easy. So they went about their investigation, and they found out that there is no obligation for anyone except that privileged group, that are external to the actual U.S. And, of course, they ended up getting fired and prosecuted and all kinds of good stuff.
Just for saying that?
Bringing out the truth. They discovered that. There was no, So that's a very interesting movie, and if most people watch it, they'll probably get really angry, but it's been out since 2004, something like that.
Freedom to Fascism.
But Freedom to Fascism, and of course Larken Rose got prosecuted because he stood on the Hill and proclaimed the truth, and showed that in Section 841, I think Title 18 actually. 841, they're the only people who are obligated are the ones that I mentioned before, and it's the people who are living in fear. I was talking to this one lady at the bank, and somehow we got around to the taxation thing, and I said, well, so what motivates you to pay these taxes on your income, because it doesn't make any sense that earning an income is a privilege. Well, if I don't, I'll go to jail. And this is what most people are living in: fear, 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 fear. And that's how the mafia works. The mafia says, "Give us your money, or we will hurt you." That's what a mafia does. Mm-hmm. And this is not the land of the free, home of the brave. It's the land of the, well, they say the land of the fee, home of the slave. It's a real interesting concept, the idea that somehow a small group of people can so hogwash the rest of us into thinking that this is an obligation that we must do. But it doesn't make any sense at all to the idea that you force someone to give you money. Just, I don't know. Take a look at all these different things, and it'll give you the same conclusion that it's just all a sham, a scam, and but they have guns. That's the only reason people pay attention to these other people.
Yep.
Is they have guns, they have violence, and they're willing to use them against you and me if we.
Yep, the government gets to choose who they prosecute. The prosecutors get to choose who they prosecute. It's clearly like court isn't just something that is super objective. If you do X or Y happens to you, and they're just going to be as fair as possible, and they're not on any one side or the other. No, that's not the case. It's completely rigged against you as soon as you are in the system. And
even your defense attorney works for them.
Yep, even your defense attorney has sworn to protect them, and it's just not fair. I love that. That's home of the land of the fee.
Land of the fee, home of the slave.
Yes. So 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up. Don't go anywhere. It's Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are
having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he doesn't believe the US has a peace plan ready for his country. He's calling for the US, Europe and Ukraine to work together in efforts to end the war with Russia. It comes after US President Donald Trump suggested peace talks could begin imminently after he spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin. At the Munich Security Conference, President Zelensky says his talks with Vice President J.D. Vance there will be constructive.
They are our partners, and I respect our partnership. And also, I have my questions where I think it will be interesting to share my thoughts and to hear Vice President's thoughts. I think it's very important to work together with teams. And when I had a conversation with President Trump, we didn't have enough time to discuss all the things about security and etc.
French President Emmanuel Macron says peace that is a capitulation for Ukraine would be bad news for everyone, including the United States. Sarah Coates reports from Paris.
President Macron says only Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky should negotiate on behalf of his country with Russia to end the more than 3-year war. Mr. Trump says US and Russian officials will meet on Friday in Munich and that Ukraine is also invited, but a spokesperson for President Zelensky says the talks with Russians in Munich are not expected, adding that a common position needs to be adopted before any talks are held. Sarah Coates, Paris.
Ukraine says a Russian drone attack has hit the radiation shelter which protects Chernobyl's damaged nuclear reactor. The United Nations nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, says radiation levels there remain normal and stable. Moscow is denying claims it struck Chernobyl, the site of the world's worst nuclear accident in 1986. The Pope is being admitted to hospital in Rome for treatment and tests for bronchitis. He was treated at the same hospital 2 years ago for bronchitis, spending 3 nights there. Hamas is expected to name 3 Israeli hostages set to be freed on Saturday after fears the Gaza ceasefire deal was on the brink of collapse. Giles Gibson reports from Tel Aviv.
Since the last hostages and Palestinian prisoners were released just under a week ago, the structural integrity of the ceasefire deal has been pushed to its limits. On Monday, Hamas announced it was pausing hostage releases indefinitely, accusing Israel of violating the terms of the agreement. Israel then threatened to end the ceasefire entirely, putting its military on high alert. But after crisis talks in Egypt, mediators now believe Hamas will go ahead and name 3 hostages who are set to be released on Saturday, in exchange for more Palestinians being held in Israeli prisons. Giles Gibson, Tel Aviv.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's libertyminded.com. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Riley,
and Stu.
and we already have a caller on the line, so let's go to the phones. The point of Free Talk Live is for people to call 603-283-6160 and talk to us about whatever is on their mind. So Sarah in New Mexico, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind, Sarah?
Oh, it's nice to have a live show tonight's live, and
yeah.
But you know what? I enjoy the repeat shows, the pre-recorded, because I get to really listen to what everybody said, like really closely again. So that's really helpful.
Oh, nice.
Are you sick, Sarah?
No, because sometimes when I call in, I kind of miss what the really everything was said. So, but the second time, it really helps me.
Are you sick though? That's what Riley asked, because you sound kind of different.
Yeah, you sound like you've got a cold or something.
You know what? I got allergies really bad. Now it's coming inside my lungs. I never had it bad where I coughed before.
Oh.
But now it's going into my lungs. This is the first year that it happened to me like this, but I'm just trying to survive.
Hey, just a word of advice. I don't know if it happens in Albuquerque, but I know in Phoenix you can get this thing they call valley fever, which is a fungal infection in your lungs. So if you can't get this thing on your hand, just don't rule that out. It's easy to take care of, but real hard to catch.
I'd go get Zyrtec
Just so
or
you know.
something. Something antihistamine.
Yeah, Zyrtec or something like that.
Yeah, well, I've been taking loratadine and all kinds of sprays, but also it's been going into my lungs. It doesn't really happen all that much, but I don't know. So, but anyway, that's what's going on. But I'm so excited that the mayor's office called me back.
About what?
Said that they will be installing more speeding cameras.
Why are you excited about speeding cameras, Sarah?
She thinks they slow people down.
We need it. You know that our drivers have been ranked the worst drivers, and that they actually
by me.
The insurance company actually rated the drivers from all the crash data. You just can't. But I've been saying that we got the worst drivers, but it's like, every person from where they live, they say they got the worst drivers.
Yeah, that's true, but
they live there.
That is true, but you're also right.
I've been to a few places, and I spent maybe a full year in the aggregate in Albuquerque, and I can testify that what Sarah is saying is probably pretty accurate.
In New Mexico,
they're bad there.
The longest I ever stayed in one place in New Mexico. Wait, no, the only place I've ever slept in New Mexico is Albuquerque. And the other thing is just that there's a bunch of drivers with New Mexico plates in San Antonio. And I'm not joking. If I saw one, I don't care if they weren't doing something bad in that moment. I was getting away from that person. And I was never wrong to do that. But Sarah, is that all you want to call to say, that you're getting more red light cameras? You don't expect them to be vandalized?
Well, it's not the red light cameras.
Oh.
I wish we had those at the intersections. Again, we are ranked the most dangerous intersections. But, we can only do a little at a time. So the people are willing to accept a speeding camera, but never a red light camera, because it gets you for doing 15 wrong things going in the intersection. And
well, the red light cameras are dangerous because they have an incentive to shorten the yellow light time, and it causes more accidents, and that's a problem. With a speeding camera, they're not necessarily dangerous, but they are kind of stupid because people are just going to learn where they are, and they go slow right there, and as soon as they get past the camera, they're right back on the gas.
Yeah, pretty much.
That is a super good point. I have a feeling that's exactly what's going to happen.
But also, there are two sides to this equation, and I wonder if Sarah has ever thought about the other end of it. So she's thinking about the punitive correction for an action she doesn't like, but there's something that causes a city to have the worst drivers. And what is it about your city, Sarah, that's causing that? And I just wonder if she's ever thought of that and how to fix it from that end.
What do you think it is, Sarah? What's the problem? Why do you think Albuquerque has the worst?
I have some theories. Is that this used to be old Mexico, and it became a New Mexico. And doesn't Mexico have this crazy driving habit too?
New Mexico was only Mexico for a small amount of time in the 1800s. I've specifically looked into that.
kind of like Mexico, because it always had a lot of Mexico influence, because they had a lot of native Mexicans living here anyways from the leftovers.
It's just kind of like a bunch of native people of that land that live there. I don't think most of them call themselves Mexicans.
So you think it's just the Mexican spirit in people that's making them drive badly?
Yeah,
it's not the case in everywhere else.
I mean, it may be. I would never have come up with that.
I don't think it's that, honestly. It's not the case in every other place. Like I said, I've driven more in San Antonio than anywhere else in my life. It's where I did Uber Eats, and there you can still notice the difference between a New Mexico car and just any of the other people in San Antonio. Tons of people from San Antonio, their ancestors aren't necessarily Mexican, even though they look like them. They're just the people that have always lived in that area, you know? So I feel like it's exactly the same thing, but it's more of like today's government and culture that's caused bad driving in New Mexico. And I think it has way more to do with things that Sarah loves, like welfare.
Well, I've been on the roads in Baja, Mexico for enough hours to see that the other drivers there were no worse than American drivers.
Yeah, that's something I don't know.
And maybe they just drive better on the Baja than they do in the mainland. I don't know, but from what I've seen, Sarah's argument doesn't hold up.
The other thing is, like, she's saying that they like are bad drivers there, but really they just have like less rules and they still get by. Like, imagine you come up to a red light where in America it would be telling you exactly what to do, but it's not telling you exactly what to do in Mexico. You just have to like go by if it looks safe to go, and like that's almost like you're a better driver if you're able to get through that.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird too because like all their speed limits are way too low. And so, but nobody pays attention to them, or I don't know, they pay attention to some of them. I guess you need to kind of have some local experience to know.
I've seen like these videos. I've never been to Mexico, but I've seen these videos of crazy intersections and stuff where it's just like people figuring it out.
Yeah.
And like crashes don't happen because like spontaneous order happens.
Yeah, I've seen those too. And I've seen some of those in specific cases where they had a traffic light at an intersection and they just couldn't figure out how to make the timing work on it, and they just took it down. And when people had to figure it out on their own, traffic just seemed to work better anyways.
Interesting.
That's interesting. I always can tell like people around me, sometimes even honking at me, when I just look around and I can tell that I can go, but the light is technically red and I just go, that they either like throw up their hands or honk for no reason, like from their parked position in my rearview mirror at that point. And it's just like, I can't believe that you're mad because I didn't follow a rule when you just saw that nothing bad happened.
Right. Yep.
It's so annoying. So that's how American drivers are. I don't know if you can really say that's much better than Mexican drivers.
I can't either. I've never driven on the road, so.
Well, we do have another caller on the line. Thank you, Sarah, for the call. And it's cool to know that she's actually listening to the reruns.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for listening, Sarah.
Let's go to Unscreened Caller. You're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind? Hello, are you there? Going once, Unscreened Caller? The name here is giving me like...
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
This is Payman Motahedeh. I'm the president of Freedom Law School, which I created in 1996.
Oh, cool.
And many of my friends have asked me to call you guys because, about the whole issue of corruption in governments, what to do about these. People feel powerless to do something about this evil monster the federal government has become. And I'm an immigrant from Iran, came here at 77 at age 14, and I found this land the free, home of the brave. Cool. Had become land of the meek and the indentured slaves. So after being a Libertarian Party activist in 89, when I became an American citizen for several years, I was taught by some wonderful patriots about income tax and the Federal Reserve, how the Federal Reserve is privately owned, and there's no law requiring the people in 50 states to file and pay federal income taxes. We've been funding our own demise.
Yes.
Our own slavery.
Voluntarily, just funding slavery, like, of yourself. Just giving away part of your earnings when there's no actual law out there that says that you're actually required to, right?
That's right. And I've been so what I started doing at the time, it's been over 30 years since 92. I've been teaching Americans to legally and safely stop paying federal income and payroll taxes. And I've been under criminal and other investigations by the IRS for over 30 years. Right now I'm under investigation.
Wow.
And I've been teaching Americans about this whole IRS fraud. And more people are waking up, thank goodness, realizing how deeply corrupt and rotten the federal government has become. And so I believe we're set for the next stage of this quest for restoring America to its roots to freedom, which is that it took many Americans decades to see how criminal and corrupt the CIA, the FBI, and DOJ, other these alphabet soup agencies are. But what people have are, unfortunately, another brainwashing in their heads that I'm trying to get out of their heads.
What's that?
There's that IRS is the single universal federal government agency that most everybody's afraid of. And when I tell them, stop filing and paying income tax, you need to see the eyes rolling, color going white, the hearts murmuring like, oh no, not the IRS. I don't want to be a martyr by not filing and paying income taxes. But the fact of the matter is, as corrupt and incompetent as USAID and all these various federal agencies that Elon Musk has been exposing, how only 6% of federal workers work at their job full-time, 40 hours.
Oh, my God. I didn't hear that.
The same goes with the IRS. They are absolutely zero when it comes to non-filers. If you don't file, you'll be joining 80 million or so Americans, according to the IRS, who do not file 1040 income tax confession forms. And people can go and stop the income tax withholding from their paycheck for free, legally and safely, at Freedom Law School's website, freedomlawschool.org.
freedomlawschool.org.
So we can defund this communist Soviet empire that the federal government has become, and it is literally collapsing from within, just like the Soviet empire did. Let me just share something else with you about that. When I talk about the IRS, people say, oh, Irvin Schiff, Peter Schiff's dad went to jail, or Wesley Snipes, and all this fear-mongering that successfully they've drummed into American people's heads for decades. But the truth of the matter is, Soviet Union from 1917 to about 1960, a few years after Stalin died, was a brutal, murderous regime. But in the 1960s, a slow process of demise of the Soviet Union started. And I remember, when in the early 80s, the Soviet Union was starting to dissolve, and in 91 it broke apart. None of us would believe that would ever happen, that this powerful, corrupt, brutal dictatorship would not fall by foreign attack, but from internally.
Wow.
And the good news is, the same way the Soviet Union was for over 50 years a brutal regime, then the process of falling apart started within. Same thing goes with the IRS.
I have a question for you. Is there a solution that you've found for people, say an employee that likes being an employee but wants to get out of paying the federal income tax? Do you have a way to help them cool the boss down, because the boss is going to lose their mind as soon as they see that you're not paying federal income tax?
I just announced it to you a few minutes ago, guys. All you got to do, go to Freedom Law School's website, the W-4 form that the IRS, we've modified and corrected it because it forced you to a box with all our objections. You can file exempt and give it to your employer, and employer payroll person just processes it. Almost never we have any problems stopping people's income tax being stolen from their paycheck by the employer. for free at freedomlawschool.org, which is why I announced it first thing.
That's good to know.
Cool.
And the second thing is, we got to start talking about it. We got to stop being what I call chicken libertarians.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Complain. Because I remember with Dave Nolan, I was the co-founder of the Libertarian Party. We have meetings, and he was a chicken libertarian.
Oh.
They would actually didn't let me become the county chair because they were chicken libertarians, didn't want to talk about income tax issue. Okay? Because, these other people went to jail, all this stuff. Well, guess what? I am the one leader of the tax truth movement since World War II who's been talking about this stuff for a long time, for decades, been under criminal investigation by the IRS. I've beaten them in their own courts, tax court, federal district court, IRS appeals office, and more. Yet, they never try to put me in prison, never been even indicted, never been put out of business by the IRS or quit. So, based on results, there's some difference between what I'm doing and also what the IRS is changing. And I'm telling you, if you go to freedomlawschool.org, you'll see proof from the U.S. Treasury auditors that the IRS in 2016 officially, internally, stopped going after Americans who do no longer file 1040 income tax confession forms. And when they told the IRS you need to start going back after non-filers, because if the American people have realized that we're going to leave them alone, we don't file 1040s, the gig is up.
Yeah.
We're going to lose the slaves. And guess what the IRS's response was?
What?
They said, we do not have enough resources.
Wow.
We're going to have to go after non-filers.
Well, what about the whole thing, how they hired 80,000 more people last year, I think it was?
More propaganda, lies, but the corrupt major media, including Fox News, these all bunch. What they didn't tell you is that the IRS has been in a state of collapse. It started in 1999 after those congressional hearings, but after 2010, it expedited. So IRS was in such a terrible shape. In order for it not to fall completely apart, Democrat communists allocated money for 8,700 agents to be hired per year for 10 years. That's not 87,000 tomorrow. In 10 years, I hope, just to avert collapse. In fact, the only thing about the income tax system that really works is two things. One, the belief of the American people that the IRS is more powerful than them. That's a big lie.
Wow.
Number two, the employers, they are the ones that are doing the dirty deed of the deep state IRS and stealing from the employee's paycheck and sending it to the IRS. Therefore, the slaves have to now file the 1040 confession form and get a piece of that stolen money back.
They're definitely doing the IRS's dirty work, the employers.
They are.
Yeah, they're playing the slave driver role.
The IRS is stop filing income tax, everybody. And business owners, stop stealing from your employees, from your paycheck. It's all at freedomlawschool.org for free.
Wow, lots of really good stuff. I am really interested in checking out your site. One question I have for you concerning how you were saying, well, you didn't think that it would have been possible that the Soviet Union was going to collapse, and it did. Do you think it has to get worse here before that happens?
Well, it has, thankfully. I mean, in a way, kind of gotten worse. I mean, people in the tax truth movement known for since 1960s how the Department of Injustice lawyers and the double-crooked judges are corrupt. Now they're openly showing you how corrupt the DOJ and the crooked judges are. These independent third branch of government is supposed to be unbiased. They're double crooked. I've seen them personally firsthand. They appoint as communists on the bench. And so all the stuff that Trump had to go through to learn and discover how corrupt and criminal the U.S. government has gone through, I talked about decades ago. In the movement, Patriot movement, we talked about it for decades. but the American people would sleep like Gulliver.
Yep, that's right. They quit reading a long time ago.
Yeah, they just trust the government. People say, I had no reason not to trust my president. They had no idea how corrupt the major media was, the judges are, the system is. Now I believe with Trump and Elon Musk, they expose them even more. So which is why I've been on a quest to try to reach Donald Trump, because if he knew about what I know, which is that the people of the 50 states are not required to file income tax. The only people by law, as published on U.S. government's official legal websites, who are supposed to file and pay federal income taxes are citizens and residents of Washington, D.C., federal workers that work in D.C., and anyone that sells real estate in Washington, D.C. That is it. When they use the term United States in tax law, U.S. individual income tax return, everybody thinks, oh, I'm from U.S., United States, the 50 states. But in law, they define U.S. as being only Washington, D.C. And this has been going on since 1913. And again, all the stuff I tell you, it seems unbelievably crazy good. But the only way you can prove it for yourself is by going to freedomlawschool.org. There's a 9-minute video on the law that starts you on all this. Again, it's not some opinion. This is not a revocation of election, U.S. or state or sovereign citizen theory, or UCC or common law, or your name in capital letters, or straw man, or copyrighting your name, all the nonsense patriot mythologies. This is not that garbage, which I started with back in early 90s also. This is U.S. government's official legal websites. The laws as published by U.S. House of Representatives lawyers, U.S. Treasury regulations as published by National Archives, and the U.S. Supreme Court decisions and IRS's website. That is it. Not the corrupt lower court decisions. No. There's some crooked lower court decisions for decades ignored the law and the Constitution. They are a big part of the deep state. But the other good thing we got going on is not just Trump. We have an educated president that I believe is going to be the incredible president since Andrew Jackson, who killed the second bank in the United States. I think it's going to be that consequential, Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump might actually be open to the idea of abolishing the federal income tax.
Which would be really nice if he does.
He does actually need to abolish it.
Right, he really just needs to let everybody know they don't need to pay it.
I hope that you can reach him.
Exactly. Check this out, guys. We have petitions on our website at freedomlawschool.org. Anybody can read, verify with a law quoted attached, and to send the congressman saying, look, I will pay my fair share of taxes if you can show me these petitions on mine are legally wrong. This has been done thousands and thousands of times by our students and others for free. And guess what? You know how many times the congressman have read this to show us we're wrong?
None.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for calling in. We're going into break, but I'm really glad you called in. I'm definitely going to check out the site. And
freedomlawschool.org.
And people should definitely go sign that petition. More Free Talk Live coming up. Thank you for the call. It's Free Talk Live.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. Forkfest.party.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. After sharply denouncing some European leaders, US Vice President J.D. Vance spoke with the Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. Neither of them gave away any tangible progress from the talks towards a peace plan with Russia. And concern is mounting in Europe over proposed peace talks between Russia and Ukraine put forward by the US President Donald Trump. French President Emmanuel Macron is the latest leader to speak out, saying peace that is a capitulation would be bad for everyone, including the US. Sarah Coates has more.
President Macron says only Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky should negotiate on behalf of his country with Russia to end the more than 3-year war. This is after it came out that President Trump has been speaking in private with Russian President Putin to negotiate a ceasefire. Mr. Trump says US and Russian officials will meet on Friday in Munich and that Ukraine is also invited, but a spokesperson for President Zelensky says the talks with Russians in Munich are not expected, adding that a common position needs to be adopted before any talks are held. Sarah Coates, Paris.
Well, US President Donald Trump has announced a new round of tariffs this week, which will be enacted reciprocally, according to how the US perceives it's being treated by partner trading countries. It could be particularly costly for EU nations such as Ireland and Germany, which have a high trade surplus with the US. However, India is working out a deal to avoid a trade penalty after a meeting in Washington between President Trump and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
We can make up the difference very easily with the deficit with the sale of oil and gas, LNG, of which we have more than anybody in the world. The Prime Minister and I also reached an important agreement on energy that will restore the United States as a leading supplier of oil and gas to India. It will be hopefully their number one supplier, and the groundbreaking development for U.S. nuclear industry. India is also reforming its laws to welcome U.S. nuclear technology, which is at the highest level, into the Indian market.
Ishan Garg reports.
What we are now seeing is actually closer cooperation between India and the US, and that relates particularly to the defense deals that have been announced. This time around, we are seeing an agreement under which India and US are going to increase joint production of defense equipment. They are going to make technology transfers possible, and this is something that analysts have been saying, that it shows that the trust between the two countries is actually building. We've also seen that despite there being clear tensions on the trade and tariff front, and the foreign ministry also says that in the next few months we're going to be seeing a lot more American imports coming, as India is very ready to relax some of its trade and tariff barriers.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Uganda has received an additional $2 million support from the World Health Organization to counter an Ebola outbreak. The East African country has reported another 9 cases, including 1 death, while another 250 people are in isolation. Isabel Nakira reports.
Uganda is battling the deadly Sudan Ebola virus as well as the Mpox outbreaks. The WHO warns the increase in cases in both diseases is heightening the rise of transborder transmission. The Ministry of Health says the situation is under control and the country is a safe destination for tourists. Isabel Nakiria in Kampala.
TikTok is back on app stores in the United States after President Donald Trump postponed enforcing a ban of the popular social media platform. A proposed law passed by Congress, signed by former US President Joe Biden and upheld by a Supreme Court ruling, had ordered TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance to sell the application or else face the ban in the United States. Benji Hire reports.
Donald Trump says he's still working on a deal to secure a sale of TikTok. He had once supported banning it in his first term. Both his and the Biden administration argued it could be exploited by China as a tool for spying or political manipulation, claims China denies. But the US president now confesses he has a warm spot in his heart for the app, touting the billions of views his content attracted during last year's presidential campaign. The short-form video service, used by more than 170 million Americans, briefly went dark last month stateside, but President Trump then signed an executive order granting it an extension until April 5th. Benji Hire, Washington.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was The Week in Review.
So, Shelby, let's start with you. You say that our bogs and marshes should actually be paved over.
That's right. Absolutely, Brooke. These things are nothing but dead body dumping pits that make life easy for murderers. And it's disgusting to me that sickos like Mr. Popkin actually want to protect these things.
All right, well, Mr. Popkin, how do you respond to this?
Bogs and marshes are important ecosystems that should be protected. I mean, they're already being endangered.
Whoa, excuse me. As long as these human landfills remain open for business, what we're essentially saying to the criminal element is, sure, do whatever you like and throw the evidence here in this federally protected black hole.
I testified before Senator Chuck Grassley, who wanted to lift federal protection on these lands, and what I told him is exactly what I'm going to tell you now.
And where is Chuck Grassley right now, sir? Could it be that he's sitting at the bottom of a bog somewhere? Why else would you be so hot on these wetlands if you aren't a murderer yourself?
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it will cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you are feeling so inspired. You'll get a membership badge that is visible in the Odyssey chat room, and we've actually made it members only already. That ad I was reading says we might make it members only, but we already have. We have a bunch of people on the line right now, and your hosts tonight on Free Talk Live are Bonnie.
Riley.
Oh, sorry, I didn't unmute you. So you've got me, Bonnie.
Riley.
And Stu.
And we have, correct me if I get this wrong, we have Payman Mataheda. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Nice.
Paymon, everybody calls me for short.
Paymon, okay. So we have you on the line, and you're from freedomlawschool.org. And I had asked if you wanted to stay on the line to talk about more, and you said you have some stuff to blow our minds about the Matrix.
Yes. So the thing people got to recognize is that, again, we all been a Gulliver nation that allowed ourselves to be slowly roped in by these little bureaucrats in the government who are minions of the big banks and corporations and powerful other special interests that really control the system. And all the candidates for presidents were all either crooks criminals like the Bushes, like the Obamas, like the Clintons. The last two that were not crooks were Reagan, Carter, and Nixon. Perhaps they were not libertarians, but they're not outright crooks. Johnson, all these guys were all crooks.
Yep.
So
I agree with.
People are waking up and realizing that we got to do something about this out-of-control monster. And we have, for a change, a president who's one of us now. He used to be a Democrat. He was the run-of-the-mill, what we call normie. A normal person that lives his life, has a job or business, watches sports on weekends perhaps, does some things with family, vacation, boating, fishing, hunting, whatever, and thought, the system is not great, but it's not really, we are still the greatest country on earth. They didn't realize how corrupt the system has become. So Trump has literally seen how corrupt it is. They try to murder him twice. As you know, they let that Secret Service allow him to be shot the first time for sure.
Yeah, that seems pretty obvious at this point.
That's very obvious. Anybody who sees. And now we have also a majority constitutionalists on the Supreme Court, which we haven't had since late 30s when that crooked Franklin Roosevelt packed the U.S. Supreme Court with corrupt socialists like himself for decades, and Eisenhower, others, followed that suit. So we got 3 solid constitutionalists on there and 3 moderate constitutionalists on there, and Trump hopefully will be able to add more to that equation. So we're not like Brazil, who is a lost cause, unfortunately. Australia is a lost cause. Europe, like England is a lost cause, it seems like, for right now.
Yeah, I definitely think that about England and Australia.
Yes, exactly, Australia. So I think
Australia is property of England.
Yeah, well, they're independent countries, technically speaking. They're part of the Commonwealth, but
Yep, just like Kent.
So I think we can get the country back if we American people wake up and stop being the monster that they're wasting your money crazy left and right. The education is there, number one. The law is on your side. You are not from Washington, D.C., therefore you're not legally obligated to file income taxes. That's one.
Well, as far as Trump goes, I just have mixed emotions because it feels like there's no possible way that somebody got into the president's seat who isn't one of them, but also at the same time he freed Ross Ulbricht, and why would one of them do that? Do you know about that?
Sure. Absolutely, because I was a Ron Paul supporter. I mean, from way back in 1990s, I had Ron Paul speak twice at my annual Freedom Law School Freedom rallies I did back in Southern California in 2000 and 2005.
Really cool.
And and I supported Ron Paul. I was one of the biggest supporters of him in California when I lived there, campaigned for him, raised funds for him. I paid people to go out and promote him. I supported Rand Paul also when he ran for president, and when Trump beat him in Florida, I remember back in 2015, I said, I'm going to check out this Trump guy. And found out, okay, he is not a libertarian yet. But the biggest thing about Trump I noticed right there, he is not one of their people. For example, Romney and McCain both ran against Obama, Obango. But they're both crooks. So it doesn't matter who won, Republican or Democrat. They were saying we call them Republicans or them Republicans, right? They're the same. For decades, that's what we had. They're the same. No matter which party got elected, they were the same.
Yeah, one year they even ran a bonesman against another bonesman.
Yeah, that was in 2004.
Who?
Bush and Kerry. John Kerry, yeah.
Yeah, but Trump was an outsider. And
I'm not sure about that.
That's the key thing about it. Well,
that's the thing. It might look like it, but I don't know that we have proof yet. The thing that really just is the only reason I'm questioning it at all is the fact that he freed Ross, because he could easily have.
It's a game they're playing, of course.
But he could easily have promised that to us and then just not come through.
But
what would we do about it?
He's got to gain supporters one way or another.
But that's the thing. Why does he need supporters? At this point, he's won his second presidency and he can't run again. And he's probably going to die, not to be mean, but not too long from now.
He has a very unhealthy diet.
Honestly, it genuinely blows my mind. I didn't really expect it. I was trying to hold on to hope. And then he freed Ross Ulbricht, something that is just a symbol of their power. They were they specifically told us that they put Ross Ulbricht behind bars because they wanted to send a message to people. They specifically said that. They also said that his libertarian values were part of the reason why she put him there. I think that was Catherine Forrest that said that because of his libertarian values, she knew that he wasn't actually sorry. So that's another reason she put Ross Ulbricht in prison for life. Why would Trump undo that? It seems insane. It seems like something they just wouldn't do. And then the other stuff that kind of makes me question is, and the thing is, I'm not saying this is concrete proof that Trump is not one of them, but it just makes me wonder, is stuff like today. He retweeted Javier Milei while Javier Milei was tweeting about how he's brought inflation down a bunch there. And he wrote, like, he who helps his countrymen breaks no law. That's what Trump wrote, and he was retweeting Javier Milei, an open ANCAP president of Argentina. And I don't know, I'm not saying it's concrete evidence. I feel like there has to be something a bit different with this person. Unless,
and I hope I'm wrong about this, but my sneaking suspicion is that they may be setting up to have Trump become some libertarian hero and then drive everything into the ground so they can point at the libertarians and be like, see, there's your new demon.
That actually might make sense.
And I've been saying that about RFK, because the thing about RFK is he is straight up, like, it's so obvious to me because he goes up there and he says, like, he just does, like, all these, like, sound bites, but he doesn't actually have any kind of, like theory on help that he's, like, actually put out there or anything. And maybe it's just that that's more of, like, my special interest, that I'm, like, clocking little things he does and says that don't add up.
Yeah, I got some of those too about him.
And that he just wants to, like, make things illegal. So, but with Trump, I feel like it's just, like, slightly different, because he's never said that he has, like, a really, like, moral standards. Like, he said in his Joe Rogan interview right before the election, like, that he would do all kinds of immoral things if it would, like, help him financially. And he said he doesn't blame people for doing that, and he respects them for it.
Right. He's a utilitarian more than he is a true libertarian.
But my thing is, it feels like he's doing things that, quote unquote, they wouldn't just let some free agent go do. It just blows my mind, you know? Like, especially, like, he didn't just release Ross Ulbricht, he gave him a full pardon, and he wrote that the people who went after him were scum and lunatics, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And he like brought attention to that. Like, he could have just done it very quietly. He, in all caps, wrote basically that Ross Ulbricht should have never been put behind bars, and that the people who did it were scum and lunatics.
Well, I think it would be fantastic if Trump turned out, if it turned out that Trump found an impetus to help America regain some freedom, I would not complain about that at all. He just still has some convincing to do for me that he's not an insider, since his uncle works for the FBI and was in charge of the team that went and rounded up Tesla's papers after he died. So
yeah, his family is suspicious.
That's kind of a big deal, and they always run these things in families. So. Mm-hmm.
And Musk's family is suspicious to me. I don't really remember why off the top of my head, but there's something like with his mom. But the thing is, like, if there was anybody that I would think that wouldn't be able to be controlled, it'd probably be the richest person in the world, right? And, like, somebody else who's, like, insanely rich on their own right. Because the way that they control, Paimon was saying, that these bureaucrats are all minions. Well, all of their wealth, that is, like, pennies compared to people like Trump and Elon Musk, comes from backing the policies that these big corporations and banks want, but, like, Trump doesn't need that, and neither does Elon Musk.
Well, the Rothschild banking empire is far richer than the richest man in the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's evidence that Trump is beholden to that very empire.
Yeah, I've heard of that, where he is in debt in some way to Rothschilds because of the fact that, like, they bailed him out for some kind of, like, Ocean City hotel that was going to go under, right?
Yeah,
is that what it was?
And I didn't want to believe this was true, and so I had to look it up, and it turns out that that Roy Cohn in fact is a Rothschild banker and did in fact bail out Trump. So there's that to deal with also.
Have you heard about some of these things, Paimon?
Yes, I have. I've checked it out. And I saw a video on this issue. In fact, I think it was on the Gateway Pundit I saw that, perhaps. But what happened is that Trump went to the Libertarian Party, spoke at their national convention, so did RFK, and made a deal with some leaders of the national LP. There's a woman, a libertarian woman, who said it. He said, look, Trump made a deal with us.
Angela McArdle.
He said that he'll feed Ross, and by doing so, we agreed in the battleground states that Trump needed to make sure he wins, those states who win presidency, we will not promote our own candidate. That's the Libertarian Party woman. I forgot her name.
Angela McArdle.
Yeah. So and she was very happy. That's what we wanted. We get Ross. We'll be happy. That was a fair deal. So the thing about Trump is this, guys. Even Ron Paul, I don't always agree with him on every single issue perfectly. For example, Ron Paul did not realize 25 years ago how corrupt the judiciary is, the DOJ is. Okay, or the media is. He learned that when he ran for president in 2012. He said, oh, man, the media is biased against him.
Yeah.
He didn't know how corrupt the system was.
Wow.
And neither did Trump. Ron Paul was a doctor. Trump was a businessman. I read his book, The Art of the Deal. He published, I think, about maybe 30 years ago, something like that, because I want to know who this man is, like I knew Ron Paul. And by reading that book, you'll get an idea who this man really is. He just was a young man like I went to college. Was not part of the elite. His dad was a successful construction guy. His grandpa was the same. So it was a 3-generation grassroots success story. And he wanted to be part of the elite of New York, but they would not let him in because, as you know, Rothschild and Rockefellers, they own the system, right? So they wouldn't let him into the club, but he became successful, and that's all he wanted to do for decades and decades. And he didn't even want to run for president. And he thought, well, I'll run for president, ran for the Reform Party decades ago. That didn't work. Ran in 2016. American people are sick and tired of the corrupt duopoly of Republican Democrats, right? And then they said, let's go for a third person like Trump. And then Trump went in there, and guess what? Right off the bat, they attacked him. Trump-Russia conspiracy, Ukraine conspiracy, impeachment, you name it, right? Because he was not lock, stock, and own inside crook. Now, I'm an anti-Zionist Jewish born myself. I'm very much against Israel and atrocities that they do.
Oh, wow.
And Trump, unfortunately, is a Zionist. That's the one thing I disagree with him strongly. But the one thing that he's got is by experience, he has seen how deeply corrupt the CIA, the FBI, the DOJ, the monsters, heads of the beast besides the Federal Reserve are really. He's a few inches away from Federal Reserve still. That's fine. I believe he's going to get there because Musk has talked about Ron Paul auditing the Federal Reserve.
Yes.
So I think in the last 4 years he was running, he got a lot of education in the process as well. So we got him. I mean, to have a president like that educated of real life, how corrupt it is, he'd been shot at. I mean, if he was an insider, why would they in Pennsylvania set him up to be assassinated like they did with Kennedy? He's not one of them. He's not a pedophile. Okay? Now, again, he was either like us for decades, LP member, activist, and credentials. No, he wasn't. Absolutely not. But he got educated. Guys, let's give him. If you study the man, you'll see me as a lifelong libertarian since I was in early 80s in my college classes, studying Milton Friedman in economics classes. I was realized I'm a libertarian. No, Ron Paul was unlike, Trump was not like me or you guys. But he's been educated. He is one of us now. And the more he goes through this process, his business sense about marketplace of ideas, products, and services. He sees how corrupt it is. By necessity, he becomes a libertarian. Same thing with Musk. Same thing with RFK Jr. By necessity, these guys all become libertarian. I mean, when we got now is different than we had in 80s, Republicans and Dem Republicans. Back then, Republicans were a war party, but for small government. Democrats were a party of peace and civil rights, but for socialism. Now it's different. Now, warmonger Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney are 100% with the communist Democrats who are totalitarians. And the populist, libertarian-leaning by nature, independent, leave me alone, I'll leave you alone, let's get along, has become all with Trump, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard. They all learned the hard way how corrupt the system is. So let's not be, we got to be careful not to stay too much in our own past libertarian bubble thoughts. Let's look at this great opportunity we have to take America back. He's talking about no more income tax on Americans and taxing foreigners instead. And let me tell you, that's exactly what Thomas Jefferson said was his biggest accomplishment by the time he ended his presidency.
Well, one thing I can say is that it's interesting that he does seem to truly be able to change his mind and listen to people. So if you were able to actually get in a position to have a conversation with him, that'd be really cool. I'd be willing to bet that might actually come to some kind of good conclusion. Is that part of the I didn't look yet, but the petition on your site, does that have to do with that, with getting you to be able to talk to Trump?
Well, no, the petition we did 4 years ago, we had people write to congressmen because they make the laws on the income tax about, hey, they're misapplying the law. They're literally misapplying the law to the people of 50 states, which doesn't apply, through propaganda, deception that people believe there's a law requiring people of the 50 states to file an income tax, but there's not. And number two,
does that mean even a state income tax?
Most states follow the federal income tax law definitions or 1040 form and instructions. In other words, if you're not required to file a federal income tax, you don't have to pay state income tax either. So New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana are the only states which are countries in this union, have their own separate, independent of federal law. State income tax, you got to pay those. The rest, you don't.
Which states were those again?
Focus is on the federal.
Can you tell me which states those were again?
The ones that you do have to pay income tax in those states that do not follow federal law definitions or 1040 form are Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana.
And that's because they've written in their own tax code separate from the IRS, and the rest of them are just using IRS code?
That's right.
Okay.
Wow, interesting. Well, this is all really interesting. I'm so glad that your friends got you to call in. And the thing is, I can't be convinced 100% that Trump isn't doing something to make us believe that, staging that he almost got shot to then make us, when we're having these conversations, say, well, how could he be, one of them when they tried to shoot him? I can't say 100%, but I still think that it's really cool that you go out there and you have these conversations and spread your information in your site, freedomlawschool.org, to people so that people can learn this stuff. And I really think that, I don't know, he seems to be able to listen to people. Vivek Ramaswamy is the one that told him about Ross, I think that it was. He met with Javier Milei, and he told Milei that he wants to do things the way he is doing it. And honestly, he genuinely is. It's not like he just gave lip service to that.
Yeah, he called Ross's mother personally.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
And I don't know.
I couldn't picture a Democrat politician doing something like that.
I couldn't either.
I can think that possibly Trump might have just been close enough to an insider to get into that position.
Yeah.
And with his recently gained knowledge of how things work, I could see him changing his mind and becoming
controlled opposition, maybe.
Becoming truly a voice for freedom.
He could be.
And thank you so much for the call, and we do hope that you call back in more with more stuff going on. We just have other callers to get to.
Yes, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. It was interesting, and do call again.
Yes, and I hope that other people go and check out your site, sign the petition. I'm going to check them out after the show. But one of the things that I also wanted to say was I thought, oh yeah, so he's also given lip service, Trump so far. He's kind of created whispers that he would get rid of the Department of Education. Wait, is that what it's called? Department of Education? If he does that...
That makes me drool.
That is another one that's like, how could any actual insider just decide to do that? That would almost solidify it for me. Thank you so much for the call. More Free Talk Live coming up. Don't go anywhere. It's Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he doesn't believe the US has a peace plan ready for his country. He's calling for the US, Europe and Ukraine to work together in efforts to end the war with Russia. It comes after US President Donald Trump suggested peace talks could begin imminently after he spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin. At the Munich Security Conference, President Zelensky says his talks with Vice President J.D. Vance there will be constructive.
They are our partners, and I respect our partnership. And I have my questions, where I think it will be interesting to share my thoughts and to hear Vice President's thoughts. I think it's very important to work together with teams. And when I had a conversation with President Trump, we didn't have enough time to discuss all the things about security and etc.
French President Emmanuel Macron says peace that is a capitulation for Ukraine would be bad news for everyone, including the United States. Sarah Coates reports from Paris.
President Macron says only Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky should negotiate on behalf of his country with Russia to end the more than 3-year war. Mr. Trump says US and Russian officials will meet on Friday in Munich and that Ukraine is also invited, but a spokesperson for President Zelensky says the talks with Russians in Munich are not expected, adding that a common position needs to be adopted before any talks are held. Sarah Coates, Paris.
Ukraine says a Russian drone attack has hit the radiation shelter which protects Chernobyl's damaged nuclear reactor. The United Nations nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, says radiation levels there remain normal and stable. Moscow is denying claims it struck Chernobyl, the site of the world's worst nuclear accident in 1986. The Pope is being admitted to hospital in Rome for treatment and tests for bronchitis. He was treated at the same hospital 2 years ago for bronchitis, spending 3 nights there. Hamas is expected to name 3 Israeli hostages set to be freed on Saturday after fears the Gaza ceasefire deal was on the brink of collapse. Giles Gibson reports from Tel Aviv.
Since the last hostages and Palestinian prisoners were released just under a week ago, the structural integrity of the ceasefire deal has been pushed to its limits. On Monday, Hamas announced it was pausing hostage releases indefinitely, accusing Israel of violating the terms of the agreement. Israel then threatened to end the ceasefire entirely, putting its military on high alert. But after crisis talks in Egypt, mediators now believe Hamas will go ahead and name 3 hostages who are set to be released on Saturday, in exchange for more Palestinians being held in Israeli prisons. Giles Gibson, Tel Aviv.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the number to call to get in on this last segment of the show tonight. 603-283-6160. And are you tired of the oppressive rules and moderation of the big tech social media sites? Our Mastodon server at social.freetalklive.com can set you free. You know, I gotta say, I haven't been, what's the word, like, shadow or like banned from talking on Twitter ever since he's turned it to X. The last time I did, I was actually thinking about this today, was because I called Joe Biden a faggot, but that was like, I can't remember if Elon had bought it yet, but there was like, when he first bought it, he had to take some time to actually, like, I don't know, break up their policy. So I feel like you could probably call Joe Biden a faggot today and not get... Oh, go ahead.
Could you call Donald Trump a faggot and get away with it?
I don't know, but the other day I said something and then deleted it because I realized that it's his website and he might try to delete my Twitter for saying something that he disagreed with, so I deleted it. So I'm just saying I didn't want to test it. But I'm not going to say what that was. I was about to say it, and then I was like, nope, don't want somebody to send it to him. But the point of this ad is that Mastodon is free, open source, decentralized, and federated. Multiple apps are available for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and Linux. social.freetalklive.com. And we already have a caller in line, but with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Riley.
And Stu.
And let's go to the calls. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Snake oil must be sweet to a gullible libertarian.
Yeah, I like snake oil.
I like snake oil too.
Obviously, you're just gobbling it all up from that Payton guy.
So,
Payman guy. Did you guys ever read the tax code and some of his claims? They're easily...
Have you read the whole tax code, dude? No, you haven't.
Come on, Skeeter. Tell us about the tax code.
I've read the relevant portions about his
Bring
claims,
it up and quote it to us.
Obviously false.
Bring it up and quote it to us. Pull it up right now and quote it to us.
Okay, Title 26, Section 7701, the definitions of state and United States, right? In the United States, the term United States, when used in a geographical sense, includes only the states and the District of Columbia, right? And what these sovereign citizen frauds will do...
Wait, you didn't quote anything. Sorry, I need you to... You were asked to quote something and you just started saying something. What was the quote there?
What are you talking about? I just quoted the definition of United States in the tax code. Title 26.
Okay, repeat the quote because you started like talking about it, so I don't know what is literally said.
The definition of United States, when used in a geographical sense, includes only the states and the District of Columbia. Does that translate to the
when used in the geographical sense? I don't know. Maybe it's not always used in the geographical sense. It's just like you can pull up these tiny little pieces of things and make all kinds of little claims. But this man is telling us that he's been doing this since 1996, I think he said, and that he hasn't had anybody go to prison.
Yeah, just like Owen Schiff and Wesley Snipes. No,
because they went to prison. It's literally not just like that.
And guess what? Some of his...
You're acting like Wesley Snipes did the same exact thing as him. Like Wesley Snipes went to his website and did his exact way to do it.
He should be so Ian should be able to use his defense to overturn his tax evasion case.
That's not how you don't just overturn things by saying something. Hey, well, I think this, and then the judge just goes, you know what, you're right. Let me overturn it. You know how it works.
Yeah, you can. That's how.
No, you can. That's not how it works.
Point to a technical rule, right?
That's not how it works. His lawyers
have been to the court system, have you?
These are technical arguments, right?
Everybody thinks that when you get in trouble, you can just be like, let me just explain this to the judge, and that's not how it works.
No.
Let me.
Okay, you don't know what you're talking about, so there's just no point. Like, if you're gonna say things like, well, Wesley Snipes went to prison. Yeah, Wesley Snipes went to prison. Do you think he went to freedomlawschool.org and did all the things he did, or it says, and then went to prison? No, that's literally not how it works. So, boring conversation. It's always the same stuff with Skeeter. If you haven't listened before, it's always just he wants to disagree with us, but isn't very good at even explaining himself why. And it's like I gave a little, like, let him give his quote, and then I said, okay, well, it says in the geographical sense, like, maybe that makes the definition different than what Paimon is saying, but he doesn't have any answers to that. You know, it's like in the geographical sense isn't what I would think of with the other parts of the like relevant parts of the law that he was talking about. Well, we don't have any other callers on the line right now, but I did want to talk about this story from the Wall Street Journal that says how
a reputable news source.
Yes, it says how Trump's sweeping expulsions have thrown the FBI into chaos, which is just amazing. It says firings at the Justice Department and FBI herald revenge. Oh my God. Like they're always saying like, oh my God, Trump just wants revenge. It's like, so who cares if he even does? But
politicians do this stuff all the time.
And it also doesn't make it not right. Like he went after for like, or by the government just throwing their power around, and it really wasn't right what happened to him any more than it was right all the things that the FBI does to other people.
Right.
They almost never do anything right. So this is
raiding
from
your house, for instance.
Yes, multiple times. So this is from Wall Street Journal. It says a half a dozen of the most senior officials at the Federal Bureau of Investigation gathered at headquarters last week to hear an urgent directive from the Trump administration. One official had been a lead investigator in the 9/11 attacks. Another ran the investigation into the attempted assassination of President Trump last summer. They all waited for Brian Driscoll, the FBI acting director. Driscoll arrived from a tense meeting with Emil Bove, the Trump-appointed second-in-command at the Justice Department. Bove told him to deliver an ultimatum to the senior officials. Resign by Monday or be fired. Wow, I had not heard this. They had 4 days to decide. We tried to stop this, Driscoll told the group. 2 weeks into Trump's second term, the president and his team have moved quickly. Wait, 2 weeks in? Hasn't it been more than that? So this article is from February 5th. I guess that was just 2 weeks. Wow.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks into, it just feels like so much has happened that, I mean, now is the 15th, so it's 10 days later, but seriously, it's only 3 weeks.
It definitely does feel like a lot has happened since Humpty Trumpty got elected.
It feels like a lot. So it says 2 weeks into Trump's second term, the president and his team have moved quickly to gut aid programs. It's so stupid because they're not aid programs just because they're part of USAID.
Yeah, that's not aid.
It doesn't stand for aid.
That's American Infrastructure Development.
Thank you. Okay, I was about to Google it. I knew it wasn't aid, and I had seen it before, but one thing is like the government keeps reporting it as USAID, and before recent years, they always called it USAID, I heard. So, because it's supposed to stand for USAID, and it's not aid programs. Sending people to teach the people of El Salvador about gender theory isn't aiding anyone. It's very strange that the government was funding stuff like that.
It's just United States government welfare that, politicians threw around to, make people across the world feel good.
Well, welfare, but also stuff like just wanting to destabilize countries by doing things like changing their culture. And how does that keep America safe? Or
it doesn't.
Why do Americans want to pay for that? Like, we don't.
Well, you got to have, CIA doing coups in other countries to be safe, obviously.
Yep. I feel so safe that there's a war in Ukraine and a war in Israel because of us.
Me too.
Partially, at least.
I'm very much more safe than I was 10 years ago.
I hate that I said us, but I haven't done that in a while. It's more because of the CIA.
Yeah. Feels very safe to have people doing things and saying it's in your name.
Yeah.
Very unpopular things that'll probably get people
when I was
mad
a kid,
at you.
I remember hearing all the time on like Fox News about, there was this like protest in the Middle East in some country this week, and they were holding up signs that said "Death to all Americans," and I'd be like, oh my God, that's so scary. Those people are just like demonic freaks. But if you think about it, they just watched their dad and grandpa and friends get killed in front of them under your name. So what are they supposed to think?
Yep.
They're supposed to think that America's the land of the free and the home of the brave, don't you know?
dropping bombs of freedom on them.
Oh, absolutely. Drop the bombs of freedom. The more bombs of freedom we'll drop on Iraq or Iran is going to make everybody want freedom, except it doesn't.
Yeah. Yep. We already discussed blowback in the first segment, and like tons of, imagine how many terrorists have been created because they are on a vendetta because they watched their family members get killed by the United States. That doesn't make us any safer. It makes us less safe.
It doesn't.
So they said 2 weeks into Trump's second term, the president and his team have moved quickly to gut aid programs, kill diversity initiatives, and push out civil servants, aka bureaucrats, by the thousands.
Yeah, I call those parasites.
Yeah, civil parasites. So, at the Justice Department and FBI, the expulsions have been swift and far-reaching, targeting investigators and prosecutors involved in the Trump probe. See, they're trying to make it seem like, oh, he's just,
they're just getting started with that.
Right, but they're trying to make it look like, oh, well, this is just him being like a narcissistic freak, or like even doing something illegal, maybe, but this is good. No matter what things these investigators have been involved in, the FBI is so corrupt and they're liars and freaks and thieves, and they totally deserve to get their special badges taken away from them.
Yeah, they're out.
All of them.
They're out stirring up trouble just so they'll have a job to do.
Yep.
Just so they have something to stop.
Making
so they can be
retarded
heroes.
kids make deals with, what they think are terrorist organizations. Oh, wow, we're so safe because the FBI spends their time doing that.
Yeah, they always use retarded people or borderline retarded people.
Yep.
Or borderline schizophrenics to, commit genocide.
All of the people at January 6th who were encouraging it, literally all the people who did the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping, FBI.
Yeah, it was like the overwhelming
all but
majority
one, maybe,
of them.
Something like that.
They had 5,000 FBI agents investigating the J6 people.
Whoa.
Like it was like 39% of the FBI department was assigned to investigating J6 people.
So stupid. And it's like, wow, they put that much, care into investigating something that kind of scared their people, but there's all kinds of stuff that goes on where people in the United States are like, well, I got my, son or something got murdered by this man, and it turns out he had people calling the police on him all the time and saying, hey, this guy acts weird, and a lot of people use that kind of situation as a reason to call for more policing. I'm not saying that. I feel like that is so often a conclusion. It's more like a point that the situation we have right now, where we have unaccountable to us bureaucratic parasites running policing and investigations and having the power to do anything about people who are violent, well, it obviously doesn't work. It doesn't work out. It doesn't make us more safe. They're spending time, like 5,000 of them, investigating, the Congress people had to be scared for an hour.
Right, during the BLM riot, so there was, far more violence and damage than what happened at the Capitol on January 6th, but
that's a really good
point. They didn't go assigning, thousands of agents to investigate that, did they? Yeah,
just the ones that investigated Kyle Rittenhouse. That's his name?
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse, there we go. It sounded wrong somehow. So they said more than 24 senior career officials across both agencies and dozens more prosecutors have been pushed out. The Trump administration has set about compiling lists of thousands of others that will review, sparking fears that many more could be fired. Oh, excellent. That's awesome.
So my question is
they should live in
this.
more fear than us.
My question is this for the listeners and maybe you and Stu, is Trump was pushing out these people. My question is he going to replace them with his cronies, or is he just going to leave their positions empty? My hope is that he just leaves their positions empty and doesn't hire any more people.
Yeah, that's my hope, but my guess is the other.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of this USAID stuff got just rolled over in the State Department.
Yeah.
So
it's also really hard to figure out like what was coming out from USAID. Like me and my friend were talking about it every day.
It paid to make coronavirus.
Oh.
So there's that.
I hadn't heard that one. Like, me and my friend were, like, Googling a lot, and I ran into the Tucker Carlson interview of, man, I forgot his name, but the guy who had been saying he was, like, out there trying to warn people about USAID. And he was just, like, went on for a long time about how he was sad that this might make people lose faith in the United States. I was like, ew. He didn't really, like, I just wanted somebody to give me a list of things that have been found, you know?
Yeah.
They were making it really hard to find.
Well, I knew about USAID funding the Wuhan Lab of Technology to do gain-of-function research on novel coronavirus, and, you know, like, I knew all about that as soon as like, I don't know, 5 years ago.
That came out, or you were saying you suspected it?
It was in the news.
Oh.
Like, you could look, it's just, you know, mainstream wasn't talking about it, but you could go and find all that stuff. It was all right there.
Yeah. I mean, I heard that it was, like, basically came out and was, like, proven that the United States government caused the Wuhan lab leak and everything. But I think the thing was, like, I wasn't really, like, familiar with the term USAID back then, and a lot of the times.
Well, that's because the USAID granted money to another, like, 5-letter agency. I forgot what they were called, and then
NIH. Because that's the thing I was about to say. Anytime, like, there's something that's just letters.
I think it did go straight to NIH, and then it went to another one, and they sent the money over to Wuhan. So
yeah. Even if I heard that exact thing, I feel like it goes, like, in one ear and right out the other, because people, like, use just, like, letters to say things all the time.
I think it was NAIDS.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. I don't know what the heck that is.
I don't either.
Yeah, I think that was the third level that they had to use for separation to get it to make it so that people weren't looking at it. But right away, there were emails leaked between Daszak and Fauci talking about how they needed to, you know, push one story and squash the other, and, like, they totally knew exactly what happened.
Wow.
They were just directing a narrative.
I also never read The Real Anthony Fauci or anything like that. Did you guys?
No.
So maybe this article is going to say, like, what he plans to do. I know that he put that guy Kash Patel in charge of, like, running the FBI, and I have no clue, like, is that a good person? What's he like? I haven't, like, tried to look into it. Have you guys?
I haven't either. I don't know who this guy is.
Not too much. It sounds like, though, that he wants to make the FBI accountable and do their job right or something.
Interesting.
But to me, that would look like no more FBI.
Yeah, delete them.
Yeah, right.
So it says, the administration has also signaled it would shift more of the FBI's 38,000 agents, analysts, and technical experts to illegal immigration, which traditionally held a limited role for the Bureau. Yeah, I don't really like that either.
I don't like it either. Because what happens when they want to control the flow going the other way?
Yeah, going out. That's one thing that I've already been scared about with, like, with Trump getting Canada and Mexico to, like, comply with all his stuff he's doing. It's like, well, now we have 2 extra giant countries if we wanted to, like, escape, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to be complying.
Yep, got to go a lot farther then.
Years and years ago, there was talk about this North American Union that was, at least I know Alex Jones had talked about, where there would be this union between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and there would be this one country currency called the Amero.
Sounds scary.
Does anyone ever know what happened to that whole story?
I remember hearing that story, but
it still sounds plausible, honestly. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's just like they put it on the back burner for a while to bring it back up now that they've got, like, a populist movement.
Oh yeah, maybe Trump's trying to create the North American Union and bring about the Amero.
I mean, he wants to call Greenland, which is part of North America, the red, white, and blue land.
Mm-hmm.
So silly.
It is silly. It's ridiculous.
It's too long. There shouldn't be a comma in the name of a country.
Yeah.
An Oxford comma for that. Like, I didn't like that they even included it anyways. I don't like the Oxford comma. I feel like it's pointless. But anyways, it says, for the past decade, leaders at the FBI and Justice Department have concentrated on threats from overseas, including terrorism, cybercrimes, as well as Chinese and Russian espionage. and also just people selling Bitcoin to people who wanted to buy Bitcoin from them, including, that was me adding, but now back to the article. It says, including the vast Salt Typhoon hack of the U.S. telecom system attributed to Beijing and the Kremlin's escalating acts of sabotage. Oh my God, I'm so scared. I hope we get the FBI back. Thank you, Wall Street Journal. So it says, Kash Patel, Trump's pick to run the FBI, is expected to shrink the Bureau's counterintelligence and counterterrorism work, according to his aides. During a Senate confirmation hearing last week, Patel mentioned China only in passing and didn't speak about any threats from Russia. Wow, they just really want you to think that like your enemies are in China and Russia and couldn't possibly be here. Obviously, they can't trick me that. Like, they've come to my house screaming FBI in my face, but, like, the average person.
Well, the average person doesn't interact with the FBI as a violent gang of thugs breaking into their houses. The FBI to them is the heroes who save America.
I hope that more people are starting to realize it's not true. Like, it definitely seems like Republicans are getting that message because the FBI and everybody going after his...
At least for now they are, because Trump. They're going after their favorite hero.
Yeah. And that is a big problem, actually. It's like if Trump does a lot of good stuff and makes the FBI kind of better, it might kind of just give them more legitimacy instead of, you know, like we said, like deleting them.
Yeah, that's that was one of the things that worried me right away when I heard about the Department of Government Efficiency. Was that I don't really want government to run more efficiently.
Yeah.
I want it to run less efficiently.
Right, you're just going to have more efficient tyranny.
That people don't rely on it anymore.
It's pretty efficient right now, though, to be fair.
Yeah.
Well, it's getting more efficient with Trump. That's for sure.
If they want to go after you, they just will. Like, if they have a reason to go after you, they just will put it like as many agents on it. These freaks, like pencil pushing Karens who have like this insane amount of, vigilance, and the word I'm looking for is like focus. Like they're probably all on Adderall, not even joking, because they can spend like weeks of their lives coming through your Facebook page and crap. I don't have it in the room with me, but I had applied to make the Shire Free Church's buildings in Keene tax-free, and of course the city of Keene said no. So I sued them. Well, they canceled my lawsuit because I didn't serve them correctly, which sucked. But I got also my paperwork in to appeal it to the Board of Tax and Land Appeals in Concord. Mm-hmm. And that was going to go through, but me and my lawyer decided that we were going to cancel it for this year and try again next year. And I don't want to go into my, reasons for why, because that'd be kind of silly of me to do. But I'm glad I waited till the last minute to do it because I got this giant folder in the mail of their discovery that they were going to send me. And it's like 3 inches thick of paper.
Wow.
And a bunch of it is like our Facebook posts and stuff like that.
Wow.
It's like, yeah, these people are freaks. And none of it is like, oh no, I'm looking at it like, oh no, they got me or anything like that. It's just like a normal post that says like Shire Free Church's Facebook post, and they're posting something like Ron Paul was right,
Yeah.
Why would they want to go after your Facebook posts in order to claim you don't get a tax exempt status?
Well, there are people, and this is just like New Hampshire bureaucrats. It's even worse than the United States bureaucrats, but they're just people who they get told somebody's a baddie, you go after them, they are on Adderall, and they can focus real hard and spend their whole day being just like, what's the word, like Karens, pencil pushers, looky-loos? Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, and they'll swamp you in bureaucratic language and paperwork and, like conflicting appointment dates.
Lawyer fees.
Yep, anything they can do to trip you up.
Yep. So it's been Free Talk Live. You can go to freetalklive.com for more. Definitely check out freedomlawschool.org. We had fun talking to that guy today. Thank you for listening. We'll be back live tomorrow. Peace.
If you've never been to a pawn shop, it's probably not what you're expecting. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Think yard sale, where you can be the buyer or the seller. The cash you need today may be something that's gathering dust right now in your garage or attic. Why wait till next Christmas to re-gift stuff that Santa brought last Christmas? Need power tools? Who cares if that second-hand electric drill is scratched up? It looks like you've been working. When you see someone with a Rolex watch, a